Next Tuesday, we'll be able to dial them into the budget a little more.
I was going to ask for that, but I was afraid that was being selfish to the audience.
Okay.
I think they want us to have really good information.
Okay.
Yeah, so just, we're working on it. A lot of these things have actually pretty much been solved, but I want to kind of batch before we, get. So we're pulling out the COLA increases on the benefits in some departments, and we're really doing actuals now too. Carrie and Nate in the booth have been working on departments I think in the initial rounds of budgeting didn't have their actuals because of the payroll bridge issues and other things, and Carrie and Nate have been working like crazy to kind of get to what Tammy used to provide in 2019, which is every single office holder in city government what they actually made for the payroll of last year, and then we're going to update all their actuals, no COLA increases, and then pulling out the new employee requests in the budget and those as well, because the benefits do currently account for that type of thing. Just so we'll be looking at no COLA increases, no new employees, and you'll have a kind of separate sheet for that. For if you want to pull those into the budget, you'll know this is what the impact would be, and don't have to kind of mental math it over. So we're pulling all of that out, basing it on actuals. Full accounting, all staff payroll, same thing, splitting the stipends from.
Everyone knows that we're pulling that out, so to put it back in, but knowing what it is, not pulling it out because we're not giving.
Correct.
Okay.
To knowing what the.
I just want people to think.
They know now.
And it makes a lot of sense. I think this is kind of the bifurcated nature of this. It wasn't done so there was initial staff requests. You'll see that. Here's all the staffing requests, what it would cost based on the departmental request. Here's the managers, sort of, I'm calling BPR, business process redesign, what this could look like at this level and what that would impact for benefits if you wanted to include this side of things. If you wanted to do just in current employees and not put anybody new in, this is what the COLA effect would be on current benefits and other things. I'd also say
That's perfect.
just in noting on staffing and discussions, I think one of the things we didn't really account for, I know kind of full-time employees in 2019 versus full-time employees now. The other thing I think we were asked to account for in terms of impact, and it's hard to obviously judge, but is churn. And we're not gonna be able to hire the full complement of these people immediately, and I did the last year, and for personnel churn, and an assistant planner, a finance director, a deputy finance director, a city manager just for a brief period of time, public works director, deputy fire chief, code enforcement officer, that was retirement but still churn, deputy assessor, an administrative assistant comms person on leave for a period of time, and an assistant treasurer are all it's a big organization, so you're going to have a lot of this as well. So also sometimes when this happens, it's pulling back from the budget, but then it creates pressure on the organization, which just another plug for it. A little bit additional staff is going to ease things. Add a little hard Ellsworth clarity, the double on friends in action. Tammy, bless her, it's the TIF stuff is really, with council we had a good discussion on TIF, but doing the budgeting and how it works over is, we're finalizing that. The snowmobile club re-edition, as well as Life Flight Down East Wood Bank, for what we discussed. The TAN interest, county tax bank fees, employee appreciation line, some structural stuff on adding the break-even point if you really wanted to pull the budget. I think, Steve, you had that one back down to last year's dollar rate. What the median at 500,000 would be, the miscellaneous fines for code, and if we wanted to seed fund, so that they can work off of that. The increasing the legislative budget back to 6,000, so that we can, so we can continue to advertise as the charter requires. Yeah, we already talked about that one. Additional quotes on legal staff training, that probably won't be budget effective, but, and then local roads 24 accounting, which we'll talk about tonight.
Questions? Mike, can you enlarge that so I can see it?
If I can get this out of the way.
And then I just want to ask for clarification. Thank you. And that's enough right there.
Okay.
You've got adding back in Life Light. I think there was also Northern Maine and Down East Wood Bank. I thought we left it, we wanted Wood Bank in but I remember conversation about not funding.
Yeah, he just wants to make sure they're in the,
Yeah, so they made a
In the-
request, and we're not gonna fund it, but we still need a catalog that this is a request. that it's
Okay, so
made.
not adding back into the budget.
And Wood Bank
just-
is gonna be, made a request, and I think we're gonna fund that at the level of the
Okay,
request.
I was reading the adding as in adding it back into the budget.
Yeah, sorry. No,
Okay.
that's a good
Why
point.
I'm asking the question.
Yeah, so we'll add all the requesters, if you made a request,
Okay,
which is also, I'm excited about this process for even making the council adjustments at the end of this piece too. So you can really go back into the budget for future city managers and others and say, hey, why did they make that decision without having to watch these meetings? You can get the cliff notes right there, and we institutionalize it. This will be helpful for me next year and others too. So a lot of work to be done. A lot of it was done today. And then we also had our department heads kind of come in to talk about our departmental requests. And I think we're going to start with Adam and Highway. Want to come up?
which is,
Which is going to be. So Adam has pretty much all of Public Works as a section, which probably won't surprise people here. I'll kind of take you through kind of like what we did last night, and we can bring Adam in if we need more, just because, the harbor budget, and I made some recommendations without him being here that I have since taken back. So if you want to go to page 279 for the harbor budget. I had a recommendation as, my kind of general, trying to reduce non-discretionary spending within departments by 20%, 15 to 20%. I had a reduction for both these from 12,550 to 8,000, and to reduce the training. My current recommendation would be just to keep it as is. I had him actually bring me through those codes and what they're for. And, this miscellaneous budget was, supplies, everything, I didn't really think that I could cancel much out of anything on that. So he brought me through the details of that piece. And, there wasn't any fluff in there. So, my recommendation is to bring it back to the 12,000 level, but it was all equipment and supplies and Hammond lumber and, things very much related to the harbor. Anything else you wanted to add on that, Adam?
No,
or
no,
you're okay with me not changing your question?
I appreciate it, it is very flat funded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so the manager adjust isn't the down for 1.6.
Yeah, the manager is just as to leave as is.
Okay.
Adam can maybe sit at the,
Yeah, we can slide over.
swap out.
Come on.
We can go to 283, the highway budget now, or maybe,
I have one question, and this is a small question when it comes to the harbor budget. It has revenues of 51.5. Is there a cost of goods sold on that revenue, or is that all in the expense?
Speak up, I'm sorry.
On the harbor budget, you've got revenues of 51.5, and I'm wondering if there's a cost of goods sold in that, or if all of the expense, if there's no cost of goods sold in that, and that everything is expense when you buy it, like fuel, for example.
Right, it's all captured in there.
In the expense?
Yes.
So there's no cost of goods sold, you don't inventory a certain level of fuel at the end of the period?
So we do sit on the fuel at the end of the season, but it's wrapped in the next, because
To the expense?
we've already, once we take delivery, we pay for that fuel, and that's when it hits.
The expense?
Yes.
So you're not carrying a cost of goods in inventory?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So you have 16,000 in harbor revenue, is that net of the expense? Because there's no expense for the gas.
There was expense, the gas did have an expense line.
Has a line, but I think there's nothing in it.
Right, it's not, because we don't know year to year what we're going to purchase.
Right, but if you've got $16,000 in gas, you gotta have an expense.
Oh, it's listed as zero.
That didn't pull over through Munis then, because we had it expensed.
So we needed to project
They
an
were
expense
washed.
in that.
You have to, I mean, even if you think, if you're gonna have $16,000 worth of gas sold, you gotta figure out where you're gonna get it from.
That's where I'm getting to the cost of goods.
That's what I, when you said that,
Yeah.
I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we need to add that expense in.
Okay.
This is in the harbor.
Yeah,
because you're buying the fuel,
Right.
and then we're
and
selling
then you're
it.
selling the fuel.
Right.
And if you're not expensing that fuel when you're buying it, which you shouldn't, I don't believe, then we're missing something. It's small
I
amount.
think it's because you used to net your revenue, Adam.
Okay. I know we used to capture it when we had
You
meetings.
did, but last year, I'm pretty positive, because we asked that question, is, you know, that's all you sold in gas, and I think it's because it was netted.
Right.
But it shouldn't be netted, it should be,
So we should break it out. It might be budget neutral, but you're just gonna see the net.
I can't hear, I get
Well,
this
if we
thing, I'm
buy
sorry,
for
what?
250 and sell for 350, that would be the profit.
So we'll budget it out and we'll see if this is the net revenue based on that, as
Right.
opposed to,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
have
not
one
just
line.
all intake, and then there was a separate expense that's not being accounted for, but just confirm that and then break it out so you can see it.
Right, yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Great, on to the highway
There we go.
budget. You know, I'm sorry, and the manager just summary here, just a quick edit. It says reduce miscellaneous expense from, to 8,000 from 11,500. What I actually want to do is split these expenses. We dialed into the details here, and you'll see he doesn't have a training line item. And there was actually, you know, 3,500, which was the training piece, which is necessary for a variety of things they do on the highway side, to certifications. You know, I didn't even have that was all very necessary training. So, so it's actually going to be not reduce it, but to split, you know, 8,000 for the miscellaneous, and we looked at those supplies, and then 3,500 just to match other budgets, so you know that that's being spent on training. The other thing, which isn't accounted for in the actual note, but I'm going to change it here, is the 65,000 catch basins. I'm pulling to 35,000, or my recommendation is to put to 35,000. We talked last night about and you can see it in the lines here, it's just not in my top line, so you can see in the 10,300, 51615 catch basin cleaning is now at 35,000 from 65,000. I was hoping to take this all down, but through the vac truck, which will save us that cost entirely. But Adam, Mike, and I talked, like, let's say council approved tonight in a special request, and we started putting in a purchase order for that vac truck. Like, we're not getting that till next year. That's a pretty big piece of equipment to put together and to get to us. So we can't eliminate that whole piece. We do have a backlog on this vacuum. We think we can live with 35,000 until that new one arrives, and then it's going to be a big service upgrade. There's some other pieces of this I've pulled out in his capital request for his portion of the funding for the back truck for this year, because of the way the lease was structured to not be on this year's tax rolls, and plus we wouldn't take delivery until a future year. But we'll get to that in the capital request. The other thing, just as a note, I tried to catch Adam in something. And the liquid calcium and the, you know, the sand and salt and whatnot. I was like, you know, we had a light winter, snow year last year, and it's not quite as simple as that on, you know, I'm imagining, as, you know, as new I am to some of these things, that just there's a big giant facility with all of it, and, you know, some of those smaller storms, they make sure we don't have ice, they still have to keep it out there, and we use like a sole sourcing vendor. If we wanted to go differently, it would be a much bigger hit to our budget to, you know, to go towards like a certain allotment each year. Adam, I don't know if you wanted to explain more on that, but we did talk about that.
So I sent you an email last thing today, and it was the same thing. I just didn't catch you. The salt bids came in substantially lower, so there will be cost savings there.
Oh, great.
So you could save money on that one,
Great, that's the
as
salt.
long as council approves the bids.
Okay. So the 160 for salt may down change a bit.
We can actually lower that by 10,000.
Okay. And then, but the liquid calcium and some of the other, the other sourcing are going to be locked in.
Right, you know, the sand vendor has offered to honor his bid from last year as long as we don't send it out. If we will do an extension of his contract, he'll honor his price that he gave us last year, which I'll bring that to Charlie and, find out if you want to bring it to you through the budget process. That will save us money. Cost of business every year goes up. But the contractor offered to honor his price from last year. That's why there's no increase on that line item. Does that make sense?
And this might be just for a quick moment to talk about, we've talked to the Arbor Commission a couple days ago. I know there's a request in for the arborist and parks and those types of things, a lot of which, Adam has been doing a fair amount of, and there is a certified arborist on staff, and we talked about, as we're looking forward, that could be a place, where we use current staff with additional stipend on what their responsibilities it would be as part of that. I think when I listened online to the first time he presented, just kind of like IT, the catch-all for a lot of these things. The implementation piece is pretty key. I feel like we might even be able to go faster. And that's not a recommendation now, but something I would be considering, as we think of the parks and recreation and arborists and our treescapes. And look out in the parklet, and that was a great collaboration between them and Tabitha and to get those trees and make boxes for them and kind of get them there, to where they're at. So I think there might be some efficiencies here for current staff as we're trying to beef up, but also have single points of responsibility for like what our entire parks plan is, where all the trees go, where the beautification is. We talked last time around switching the beautification budget from gyms to Adams and Highway as well, just so like this is where this lies. It's not to say that we couldn't have an entirely separate department to this. I think that we consider that as well, but yep.
One thing that I was thinking of as I came in or after Arbor Commission yesterday is, and also thinking a little bit about Heart of Ellsworth, and something that you said when you had your community thing, was the idea about partnering with community, whether it's nonprofits or not nonprofits, and especially like Arbor Commission and Green Ellsworth people, and I think Heart of Ellsworth too. There's like people in Ellsworth who are knowledgeable and also like have energy and time. And so just trying to think about how to capture that. Because I know, especially with Green Ellsworth, for example, there's this sense from that group that's like, we're here with all of our knowledge and time and desire, and we want to do all this stuff. But the city's kind of been holding us at arm's length, or they don't want us.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's a way, I don't know what the way is to harness that, or because like you said, there needs to be kind of a touch point person. And I mean, Adam's got a ton on his plate, so I don't know that he could be like the volunteer coordinator.
Can I speak on that for
Yeah.
just a second? So about a month and a half ago, we actually had a wonderful meeting about beautification of Ellsworth. Matt, Jana, Charlie, myself, Jim, Heart of Ellsworth, the Green Committee. There was a huge amount of players in the room around the table, and it's the first time that's happened that I know of. So I'm in hopes that that is going to be a better collaboration going forward.
Yeah.
It is exactly what you're talking about. We may not be able to really depend on them as far as the labor part, but getting a complete plan in place, is where they'll really play a major role.
Yeah. And, the Public Works does have an admin request. They are a lot of shared admin and the grants funding, and I think that's kind of the holistic, finance hopefully takes back a fair amount of that. But, how we staff things, how we approach that. And I actually had a great conversation with our congressional delegations representatives. And they were talking about, I was talking about just the great things in the town and, beautification and the planning grants that people are applying for. And they said, I think it's Dover Foxcroft has like the most amazing hanging basket program. And this is a unique, they hired like a specific staffer that just does hanging baskets. They grow them, but they're like famous. So you drive in, all of them mentioned like you pass these hanging baskets and they are spectacular. I'm not saying that Ellsworth is now going to have a dedicated staff, but they do. It's a creative way to really put their stamp on the town, and I do feel like we have these kind of community resources, plus the team here to maybe think creatively about that to get some big purchasing of the stuff and getting it in there as opposed to potentially just purchasing staff to coordinate it, which,
Yeah, and I'm thinking about things also like I know Heart of Ellsworth puts out planters and they water, like volunteers actually do that work, and I'm thinking about the Arbor Commission, and like we have a tree problem that we need to try to figure out how to solve, and that includes like, is there beech leaf disease? And that, which is something that there are people on that committee. Anyways,
Yeah.
it sounds like good. It sounds like all that work is happening.
It is,
Yeah.
and there was the whole group. There must have been 15 or 20 people in the room. Do you remember, Charlie?
yeah, probably 20 people.
Yeah.
And there were some spicy disagreements, which was
Yeah.
great. I mean,
Yep.
it was really, hey, why don't you do this on this? Well, we actually do this, and here's what we do. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that's some kind of forgotten about properties that, and I think next steps, and Jana's, she's doing a ton of grant work on this and beautification, and I think it's gonna, both this year and next year, get some real value add. So
There's also, it's the University of Maine out on
Boggy Brook
Brook.
Road. Yeah.
Yeah, the extension,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yep.
they're just a wealth of knowledge.
Information.
Yeah, they really are. I called them on my rhododendron, trying to figure out what was the matter with it. I took a picture, sent it to them, they told me.
Oh, really?
Do this. Yeah, they're great, they're really great.
Yeah, cooperative extensions are always like that. They're amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'd be a great area to go to, consulting on our trees if we don't get an arborist.
Yep.
yeah, and
So-
HCTC could maybe be something they could help us out with this too. On I don't know if they have any programs for this type of thing, but.
I have a question, if I may. Adam, you always turn in a very fair, reasonable budget. And you just mentioned that you put the salt out and it come in 6.25% less, $10,000. Why would you not do the sand? I'm not suggesting that that's an error, but if the salt come in for less, why is it that we thought the sand wouldn't come in for less?
There was a pretty big disparity with the bids last year on our gravel and sand screening. And the gentleman, the contractor that was awarded the bid, I feel he left quite a bit of money on the table. And I was worried that it's a gamble, it could cost us more, and if the desire is they'd rather, take the gamble and put it back out, we can. Part of the reason the salt bid is a lot less is because it's a different vendor. So it had been New England Salt for the last 5 to 7 years. Well, this is a different company that has bid, and I think that they must have wanted the bid because it's $4 a ton cheaper.
Is it the same product?
Same product. It is mined salt.
But that's a group that's like the state of Maine, right?
State of Maine, yeah, so the
So
state of
it's
Maine is
everybody.
the one that actually sends the bids out. And I'll bring it to you the next council next council meeting to explain all of that.
And you might be right dead on
Yeah.
by not putting it out to bid, but I don't know why a vendor would come to you and tell you that if you don't put it out to bid, I'll honor it.
Right.
Last year's price, that,
Right.
and nothing against anybody.
Yeah,
I'm just
no, not at all.
asking
Yeah.
that mentality, if you will.
We had, and that's happened on other contracts that we've had. With our long line striping contractor had honored his same price. I believe, it was a year extension for 3 years, and he never, even during COVID, never went up like everybody else. So we just gave them, or awarded them the extension. This year.
Wasn't he an employee? working
No,
for us?
this is the long lines.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's the fog lines and the solid and dotted yellow
Okay.
lines, not our symbols.
Okay,
Right.
I had the same question, Steve.
you did.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
lines and all, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, one's signs, long lines is what we refer to them,
Okay.
and the other one's the symbols, the crosswalks.
Okay.
And I'm not opposed to putting that back out. It doesn't take much work because, the bid really doesn't change year to year. It's winter sand and 2-inch minus or road gravel.
I'm indifferent. I
Right.
just wondered if the salt went down, is it worth looking at the?
Yeah.
And, 6% of 60 grand isn't much if it went down the same as salt, but
Right.
never.
It all counts.
Well, I'm asking, and maybe the service you're getting from that vendor is wonderful, and the quality of the product is wonderful, and it's not worth messing with. So I'm asking.
Yep.
I'm not suggesting.
Any other questions before we go to parks, trees, and cemeteries? And we have capital part of Adam, so we'll finish off his section of highway, and then we're gonna go to his section of capital, just so we don't keep tossing back and forth. So it's 291, I think, is what I have for him. This one is the, and we put this in the departmental request, but this also kind of reflects putting the park planning and maintenance, 292, to the 50,000, taking it from Jim's budget, putting the full amount for all of that, the next year in here, so that, we're starting to consolidate any of the parks planting, just so we start having it in one place and can categorize it as such. We also, I'm probably gonna strike the miscellaneous supplies Adam and I talked about today, the 3,000, which is really more planning and maintenance, and trees, so that, there's no reason to kind of separate those two out. It's for the same type of line item. The last question I had is sort of the garden club is here in park, trees, and cemeteries. Again, maybe we could think of that as more of a nonprofit, and and recreation in future budgets, but just, it's not like Adams, even though this is kind of the highway and harbor or public works, that's an amount that goes to the garden club, and we think their request is for 7,600, not 7,000, so we're gonna increase that to 7,600. It's one of our changes here.
I thought they were in the rec commission budget last year.
No, they, I think that might have been the first year we took them out, I think it was last year.
You took them out of the rec
Yeah, I
commission
think last year we removed all beautification from the recreation commission.
and put it here.
We put some of it here.
The Arbor Commission request, is that in here?
The Arbor Commission request, I think, is,
They're their own.
that was the one that just came in. We haven't reinserted that into the budget yet.
It was emailed yesterday.
Yeah, that was like.
Well,
the-
she had submitted it before, but Michelle had asked her for, kind of to specify,
Yeah.
so we
So
worked
I'll
on
put that in
it.
the change logs to add.
It's in the budget, it's just so, it's under like the recreation section of the budget, but it's not under the recreation commission budget. But there should be a section with Arbor Commission, Recreation Commission, Historical Society, and the Historic Preservation Commission.
But I'll, what's that?
So we'll get there, just not there yet.
Yeah, we'll add the substantiation stuff.
Great. I agree with you with the garden club being put with the other supporting groups rather than embedded in the department.
The highway piece.
Does the garden club do anything for the, I don't want to say this wrong. They used to, remember they did the old cemetery for us, and did some other things, and we were funding them for that. Is there a planned project for this year? Do you know?
I do not know if there's a planned project.
I don't see that the Arbor Commission stuff is in that rec.
It's up there.
Is
Oh,
it
they have their own
yet?
budget.
It's in the recreation section, but it's its own.
So that's one that I would think would be under.
You're gonna say
Parks.
page
It would be
number.
four.
I wish, but the computer does not have the page numbers.
What section?
Charlie.
It's in recreation.
We're jumping around. We're talking highway
No,
right
I
now.
thought it's
Page
401
403.
it says, but I don't think.
I don't think it's on 401, no.
403.
No, for what is this third?
Is it on 402?
That's what they're saying.
403.
I don't
Arbor
think,
Commission, it is 401.
but it's not on there.
Cover pages for it.
Look on 403.
403, so give you the information.
That's mine.
Yeah.
Huh. And then it says,
Oh.
well, it says Recreation Commission budget, so it's a mislabel on the Recreation, we don't.
Yeah, and then, because the next page, the recreation is on 178.
I think it's up there, but I don't think
Oh,
it's in
okay.
these books.
It should say.
So page 403 is Arbor Commission, not Recreation
That's correct. It
Commission.
is,
Mine says Recreation Commission.
Right.
Yeah, it
yeah,
should
it
say.
should be,
Arbor.
it should be Arbor.
But the Arbor Commission request I thought was 40,000.
That was that recent.
We'll pull this back in. We need to, social services and nonprofits, we need to go through a bit.
Yeah.
4-6.
Back to park, streets, and cemetery. So for cemetery repair, you also have a cemetery budget is somewhere else, right? Maybe it's in the, we have the reserve accounts.
We reserve accounts for cemeteries, yeah.
And so for cemetery repair, why doesn't the cost come out of the reserve accounts?
Can I answer that one for you?
Yep.
Because those reserves are for the private cemeteries. We can't cover those, except for, I think there's a little bit that might be for some of us. These are cemeteries that the city owns that are closed,
Okay,
so we have to mow them and do the necessary items for them.
works for me. I guess the question then is, private cemeteries, because they're reserve accounts, it makes sense to account for them in that aspect of the budget, not here.
Michelle
It's
probably.
a special fund,
It's a special.
because we're taking care of it for them. We're not, it's not our money,
Yeah.
it's not city money.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, should we go to the garage budget? I had no changes here as well, this seemed to be pretty well accounted for. No big changes, in fact, some of it was down already.
Where do I recall from months ago when we were going through this, there was a need for office space for somebody in Public Works?
Reggie.
Well, Reggie was one.
It's a
And then
very
there-
big smile on your face right now. See, we do listen. Reggie was what?
Reggie was one, and there was a discussion around
Okay.
if there was an admin added for Public Works where they would go as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a problem with office space for, or only if there's an admin, they need someplace for the admin to sit? Just-
No, I mean, it's like a long-term problem, so the discussion's been to re-up the lease that Reggie's currently in at the Main Coast Mall for this year, so we can actually put together a plan, find out where the water department should go long-term.
Okay.
Yeah, and but they also need a garage. You know, I thought about it, you know, Avery Lane, I was like, well, maybe there's some extra space, and they need a garage, that's not.
Well, that's, we do what we can with what we got, so.
Right, right.
Okay. Well, it's so
Uh,
good to hear pieces are coming together.
So no other conversations about garage? We maybe go to Adam's,
There's two miscellaneous lines for garage.
some supplies and,
Yep.
oh yeah, miscellaneous expense.
And miscellaneous contractual.
Which is zeroed out.
Probably don't have the breakdown sheet with you.
One more?
Because I didn't find that in my emails, that one.
I'll have to, we'll look into it and get back to you, John.
No, just, Star.
You have your one.
Do you have your notebook with you?
I don't.
I don't know.
Things that were too heavy. I couldn't-
I thought about it and I couldn't fit it in my bag and I left it at home.
Do you have the printouts that you had within this one?
The what?
The printouts that from this one that you and Adam were looking at?
Isn't that what we handed out?
It has a narrative.
No, garage wasn't in that.
No,
one.
Garage wasn't in that
not
one.
for the garage one.
Not the garage.
Okay.
All right, we'll get the narratives on that. Yeah, this just had the other narratives. Oh, solid waste, we still need to get to solid waste before we go to capital. That's the last one here. I had no changes on this one except for, let's 303, just to mention that, you know, we're gonna work on an e-waste revenue line, and that we have to kind of create the new schedule for the other revenues, which, you know, is still in process. One of the many administrative pieces for Public Works that's kind of in process that we're gonna be looking into. That could be additional revenue, but we didn't want to put it here yet before, you know, and it might not, it might be pretty neutral.
Might be a little bit.
And right. It's been fairly popular.
Cool.
What's the total full-time employees? I mean, like across all of Highway?
14 at Highway, 2 at Transfer Station, 2 part-timers at the harbor.
Are the transfer station employee salaries in this?
Payroll full-time at the bottom.
Oh, okay, yep, see.
You know, it's another small edit, just in the future, maybe keeping all the payrolls at the top, which is, a few of them are like that, but.
What's MSW collection?
The solid waste, municipal solid waste. Is that what you meant?
Collection.
Yes. So it's when the truck goes around town.
Oh, okay. That was the one that skyrocketed last year, correct?
Correct.
It's actually, it was 2 years ago.
Well, okay.
Yeah, no,
It
and
went
we,
way out of sight.
it really did, and it's still
Quadrupled.
very expensive.
Has that gone out to bid, or was that a 3-year contract?
That was a 5-year contract.
5-year contract?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we deferred some of the increases over the 5 years. So it's, you know, it's one of those that we're still continuing to pay for portions of it. You know, we finance the increase is what happened.
There'll be 2 more years left of that contract?
Yes, sir.
Are we confident that anybody else would respond to a bid in those 2 years?
There's not many to bid on.
Because they were the only ones that bid, that's why we ended up having to eat it. isn't
They
it?
were the only ones in the ballpark, yep.
Yeah. I was at that council meeting.
Yes,
Dying.
What can you do, yeah? Except for
Yep.
take it over in-house and pay more.
I'm not allowed to say that because I was told no.
Yeah, well, I guess
Not
we.
me. You're looking at me, I didn't say it.
Can you lease garbage trucks?
Yeah, you know,
Got
we
2 years to think about
got
it.
a couple years. I was just reading actually a case study on this. Problems of doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, well, we both, I think worthy of consideration, probably not the next year, but maybe moving forward, looking ahead, soliciting. It's also a lot of other cities and towns, it's a big issue, so.
Are we normally pretty close to net neutral for solid waste? We're only, what, $7,000 cost when you back out revenue? Is that pretty standard?
Except for last, FY '24 when it went up,
Right,
because of that one big one, I guess that's the budget busters.
right. And the recycling revenue went down.
But we're forecasting,
Yeah, that's solid waste billings, is that right? 287,000?
Those are the numbers they got.
It went up 720% from 24 to 25.
Might want to check that, because we don't do as much in solid waste billings as we used to, do we? Because we give it all to D and J.
Right, yeah, all of the construction waste we did, yes.
And metals, and we don't do metals or anything
We
like
don't
that,
do it,
right? So
no.
this is just weighted trash.
It's weighted trash, that's it.
Okay, check it out.
I'll look into it.
stickers went down and the solid waste went up. It's weird.
This might be a good time to let everyone know that Peter McEldowney has a big complaint about the cost of solid waste stickers. I have bought and given him some, and I asked him why he needed more. And he said, because they cost $3, I'm getting them for free and I'm selling them for $2. Free meaning I was paying $3.
Very entrepreneurial.
And he was selling them for $2, so he was gaining $2 a sticker.
What's his phone number?
Yeah.
Go see him next time.
I just buy them for two.
Yeah. Full disclosure, it took a month for me to catch on what was going on.
That's funny.
Soft heart tax.
What do you want to do now?
Capital.
Where
A
are
little bit of
the,
reading going on. Capital, and it's 526, and it was a single sheet that got sent out. You know, this is kind of an overview. I want to discuss and kind of where I'm at, what we're thinking about, and we'll get to each department, but these are also the big capital requests, public safety, public works. There's a little bit of facilities in here, IT.
Remember, oh, I really put it somewhere.
You probably put it in, there's a capital section.
Are we looking at the new
Oh, yeah,
one,
no, it's
Charles?
It's
That's
526.
526A.
And yeah, it looks like this. It's just sort of the top lines of.
Yep.
And I kind of talked about this yesterday on just some of the, this is where the big ones are if we're going to pull down, and what we may want to consider a bond or ban to bond on some of these things. You know, the ones I pulled off from Adam, and, feel free to talk, we may want to consider bringing them back in, is the new wheel loader at $238,000, and the single axle plow truck with equipment at $207,000. I think, when talk to kind of where we're at with these things, I think both of them are needed. They are also potentials for leases on these.
Could we finance them?
Could finance them. I also felt like this one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, the plow truck one is one that we'd probably go into and might also arrive later in the year. The one that is the more pressing need is probably the new wheel loader, which is in worse shape, which could bust on us, in which case we'd have to rent one in the intervening time. But I feel like these ones are, as trying to pull more into a potential bond later in the year for some of the capital improvements that wouldn't be all on the taxpayer this year, stuff that we really need, to consider. Those are two of the big ones I thought were ones that we could pull off to a later date. But Adam, I'd love you to make.
So, we have 9 full-time plow trucks, and the typical plow truck lifespan is 10 years max. We currently have 4 trucks that are over that 10 years. 2 of them being frontline trucks, 2 of them being spares. So the further we push these purchases out, the more expensive in the long run it's going to be. So ideally, 1 truck. Unfortunately, there really is no leasing, financing with those. Those are a purchase. The loader, the one we're looking to replace, is a John Deere loader. Oh, thank you. And it was our spare loader or our backup loader. So in the wintertime, our operations require 2 loaders. One stays at the highway garage, loads the sand, loads the trucks, the salt. The other one comes downtown and keeps the parking lot, sidewalks, everything cleaned up and clear. The typical life expectancy of a piece of equipment is 12,000 hours. And as you can see, the spare loader has 12,064. We can finance or lease to own that. There was It was the same finance company as the vac truck. Yeah, I think NCO. But I did not get numbers for it because right now it's backed out.
Because you've got 2 trucks here. If you could get one, would you do the loader over the other?
So I think I only have 1 truck and 1 loader for this year, don't I?
You had single axle plow truck with equipment,
Mhm.
and then the loader. They're both, the single axle plow truck with equipment is 207,000,
Mhm.
and the loader is 238.
Yes.
So if you could get one, what would you like? What would you prefer? I know, it's kind of like Sophie's Choice, but
It's,
So full disclosure,
that's dark.
that spare loader is at the wastewater department, because it's what we use to load the truck that goes to Canada.
Steve.
And we use it once a week, roughly. The summertime, we may use it twice a week. The only point being is, during normal highway operations, before that happened, that loader would pretty much sit dormant in the summertime and not be accumulating hours. But now that we're using it, it's being used year-round, and it is accumulating hours every week now. And so then the thought process would be, it wouldn't have made sense for the wastewater department to buy a new loader that it uses once a week. It's a huge expense for a little bit of work. So the determination was made earlier in the discussions that it made more sense for the highway department to have the 2 newer loaders. And we would have the backup loader. Because we use it a lot less. And in the wintertime, when our stuff slows down, it's not gonna see a lot of hours from us. And so we can kind of make that work. But it's much more critical for them to make sure they have a functioning backup.
And this, because of the, you know, how it could take some time to get these things in here, these were ones that are, you know, considering if we're gonna try to, what do we need as departments to get through December in the capital piece? And then the consideration that, you know, these would be, that's why I don't say no on these things, that we maybe consider a bond later in the year. You know, under consideration. And I don't know, Adam mentioned like a band bond has been done in the past for some of things of this, like if we did lose that loader and, you know, if we felt like we could move forward. But we might go try and get these from just, maybe, to, hey, we want to buy this, but you can't buy it till next, you know, blank. So
So the plow truck is how long out?
So the plow truck could be 12 to 18 months. The loader is probably 12. And I am worried to answer your question, to be honest with you, because if I tell you I want the truck and the loader goes down, we're gonna have to rent a loader. If I tell you we want the loader, the truck goes down, you know, we do have a spare truck, but as you can see by those numbers up there, scroll back up if you would, Mike. The spare truck is a 2009. And the other spare truck is a 2005. One's got 133,000 miles, the other one's 86,000. And probably Steve can speak to this. You'll see that the 2012 and 13, the 12 I did not fill the mileage in. They're pretty close to the same mileage, but they're the Max Force engines, which are just full of issues and problems.
Could you, for the wheel loader could be financed,
Yes, sir.
and then the single axle plow truck, you're saying we're not even gonna be able to purchase it for a minimum of a year?
Well, so we could purchase it, but they build it, you know, and right now, and we're still not repaired from COVID setbacks. So each dealership gets a certain amount of trucks. Then the towns go out, and the state, and all of our local governments will go out, and whoever gets to them first gets that slot. And if your dealer was low bid, and he doesn't have any more slots for this year, your truck gets pushed ahead for another year.
unfortunately, we did receive a notification that there's federal funding through the Inflation Reduction Act for electrification of vehicles and municipal fleets. Seems like a great idea, but I also think they tried this in New York City with, so if the feds could fund some of these things, and they haven't figured out how to keep these things running in Maine.
We're not ready
It's not
yet.
really an option. There might be some options from some of our lighter duty trucks, and we're gonna do an inventory, which is kind of why I'm putting a hold on, or wanted to. Same thing with public safety. I wish we could have electric fire trucks and electric police vehicles that operated really well in Maine, that weren't public safety, but probably not for those pieces. There might be other parts of our fleet that we can electrify and do some infrastructure upgrades and maybe save in the future. And Mike and Adam and Reggie and I are gonna talk about what those trucks could be. But these ones are gonna have to be gas for a while.
And if we were gonna do a ban or something for the plow truck later this year, what time frame are you looking at?
I think, Nate, the bond bank opens in October, right?
I believe so, yeah.
So that, let's say, best case scenario, we determine we have money for it in October. You go out and say, yeah, we're ready to buy one, but you're not looking at getting another one until the following October.
Right.
But if we do it now, you're not looking at getting it until next winter anyways. So in that sense, it makes sense to put that one off in October, because you're not gonna use it until either way, you're getting it the same winter. One's just closer to the one winter than other. I mean, again, this is all like speculation, right? Does that make sense, though? Or am I?
Kind of, but on the other thought, I could say, if you approve it, we order it now, we pay for it when it comes in, right? So you're
Oh,
looking-
yeah, okay, so you're not required any upfront payment
No,
or maybe?
no.
demo?
Once it's built and we take delivery, then we pay for
And we
it.
could consider it as a lease. And I think that with a lot of these things, I want to get a better handle on the leasing options and what that sort of piece is going to be for, our police fleets and other fleets, and and what we're going to build towards. We'll talk a little bit, buys us some time, and we're not putting those two really big ticket items on this year's tax rate, but putting them in the bond band.
So could we approve, so I guess the question is we can say, yeah, why don't you go ahead and work on purchasing the truck? Again, this is all just speculation or hypothetical. But we don't even account for it in this year's budget, and we figure out whether we'll pay for it through bond bank financing or some other approach, but it wouldn't even be really until next year's budget.
Can't do that.
Can't commit ourselves
You
to
can't
pay
commit
for it
yourself.
later.
Right, you have to commit the money now and encumber it. You can't accept a bid on anything without the financing. So you can say that you're gonna go out to bid and then go out to bond and don't do it, but,
But we
You
have
really
to,
shouldn't.
we have to budget for it.
you'd have to budget for the debt service if you're gonna do that too. So-
Or bond it and have the bond in hand when you go out to grab it.
But can you just, so the wheel loader, you said you haven't checked into what it is to finance that?
Correct.
We could do that and just get a
Could
little
have
more
answers for you
information on that.
tomorrow.
Because, the bond bank, we got a lot of things that we keep saying that we're gonna use in the bond bank. I just don't wanna have so much debt service, because next year you're gonna come back for another truck, right? We got 9 trucks, so it's not like we do this and we bond it and we got 5 years to pay for it, and then we're not gonna have anything else, we're gonna be adding year to year.
Is there a benchmark percentage of total budget recommended to bond, to not go beyond, in business, we're looking at like cash flow at a certain percentage of total debt?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. You probably get something through TFOA or MMA.
Yeah, I can, there's, I want to dial in on some of those more financing issues. There's also the other piece, like we're carrying our highest debt service right now. It's gonna be this year, next year, and the following year, which is also like, oh gosh, we're carrying this much. But it's also in some ways an argument that like, you got to bond in the future years to put that money there, as opposed to now when you're, carrying the debt service, so that you don't, so that future years will carry. That's what we're living with now, is what people no offense, Michelle, others, but what others put in, that's the whole point. So but again, I'd rather have a much more like high-level detailed financial analysis. Once we're reconciled, we have all of those pieces. I think even talking like, the bond upgrade or the bond downgrade and getting it back. He's talking recently with our accountant, that's really relative to like a depreciation in the wastewater plant, not even necessarily a reconciliation of accounts. So that's a piece, but even if we were to get that rating back up, the bond bank is probably gonna, at least in this kind of market, that's gonna be our best options for this type of bonding. So that for the next few years, regardless of ratings, it's probably where we're at, but I do want to do more analysis on it.
And
Go ahead.
related to that, I remember sometime in this span of 6 months or so, there was a graph that showed those levels of the debt service that we had and showed that. I don't know where that is, but when we get to the point of talking about debt, it would be handy to have that in here.
Do we have that in
I can go print it right now if you like.
No, we'll bring it back for
Yeah.
When we get to debt service,
Yeah.
that's a really helpful visual to understand.
maybe we can bring that
This
into the
conversation.
next conversation.
Good, thank you.
And maybe I'll ask around too, just to get a little more high-level advice on sort of what you just asked, John.
Steve's got something going on.
Oh, I have some burning questions. Could we just step back just a little bit? And you mentioned full disclosure about a wheel loader of the highway department at the wastewater.
Yeah.
Could you repeat, you've got the 12,000 hour machine, is that correct? And what model is that?
John Deere.
That's a make.
940, I didn't put that on there.
How much does it weigh?
It's a G946 grader.
No, that's the
No,
grader.
no,
We're looking
I
at
mean,
the loader, Mike,
Sorry.
but the loader is not on there.
All right, is it a 624? 644, 624? 3-yard machine, 2.5?
Yes, 3.
Okay. So, and how often are you loading trucks?
Once a week, typically in the summer when we're busy, tops twice a week.
Twice a week. Okay. So, twice a week in the summer, 9 months, once a week? Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. So, is there any other use that you're using that for down there?
Nope.
Okay. So, and my question would be, it's gonna ramble here a little bit, please forgive me, but my question would be, if you have a skid steer, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Can't reach the top of the truck.
Can you build a ramp?
We did build a ramp for the loader.
Okay, but you can't build a ramp for the skid steer to reach the top of the truck?
No, it would be, the ramp we built for the loader was probably, 2.5, 3 feet tall?
Okay. all
The
right.
loader's
Fair
a
enough.
lot bigger. So just for your benefit, if you know machines, the skid steer, I think it's a 770.
So he's
Bobcat?
loading an 18-wheeler like a chip train.
All right, okay. So the ramp won't help you, but my question is this, if you're gonna go once a week,
Yep.
say you pay a contractor $500 a week to come in and do that, okay? I'm asking. I'm
Yeah,
not
no, I
stating.
guess the thing is,
Let me finish before
Yep.
we go too far, okay? If you paid a contractor to come in and load that, that may not be as easy as it sounds because of the truck timing, et cetera, right? But, putting all of this together, Adam needs this loader in the winter only?
I can use it in the summer some, but the
You're
majority.
not now, are you?
The majority of the time is the winter.
Okay.
We're using the backhoe now with a 1-yard bucket on it.
Okay. And that won't work for him once a week?
No, no, he still couldn't reach the top of that trailer.
Okay. I'm just, where I'm going with this is there something that can be done that you can have your once a week arrangement, you can have, and I realize if you don't know when your truck's coming, that's tough, but is there some working relationship that could happen that you hire a contractor to come in, you rent a loader to come in, you get your other 2 loaders back, and let me go one step further. We're talking about a truck. is there any consideration to taking one route of your plow schedule and outsourcing that, putting that out to bid for a contractor to do that?
They did look into it, but it was back when Tim King was here. And I don't think they've looked into it since then. The
Yeah, I
other
did.
issue that
That's-
maybe I didn't make a big enough deal of is there's over 12,000 hours on that John Deere loader
That's down at his place.
that's down at his place. The useful expected life is 12,000 hours. You know, if he's only using it once in a while, he could get a year or two maybe out of it. If it comes back into our fleet and we have to use that full-time in the winter, it's just a matter of time. It's old equipment.
And you could rent one for the winter?
We could, yes, and we have.
We have to budget.
Yeah, but it's.
Or it's an,
4,500 a month?
So it seems to me, for the loader, it makes sense to see what the finance option is,
Yep.
compare it to a rental. And then if we can finance it, you know, it might make sense to finance it. Again, so really, it seems like the real question is the plow truck. And obviously, that's a $200,000 ticket item, so, and they're saying they need, their trucks are old and they need new ones, so. I think we should, my sense from the council, or at least my thought, is we say, please go see what the finance options are on the loader. But we need to make a decision on the plow truck.
Do you want me to check in on what it would cost to hire out a couple miles of road?
I'm wondering, I'm not suggesting,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just.
I'm asking Steve.
I'm wondering if that's the beginning. I mean, a lot of towns hire it done.
They do, but they don't have the quality of roads we have.
Oh, I would agree with that. I'm just wondering if it's a get me by, if it's a, I'm not suggesting it, I'm asking the
Yeah.
question. You can wrench your way out of a wheel loader problem that you
Mm-hmm.
can't with a truck.
Correct.
But as Michelle pointed out, it's not a short-term problem, it's just what we're gonna need and what we're gonna need every year. Yeah.
More
And if you
expensive
can
to
finance, what I'd like to see is like what Steve is saying, if we're renting the combination, but if you're gonna rent something for 10 years, you're gonna pay this much. If you're gonna finance for 5 years, you're still gonna 5 years free. So that's what I kind of want to look at too.
I'm thinking seasonal rentals like you do your excavator.
Which,
Not-
at this point, we could have bought one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like that's just kicking something down the road and you're paying more money at the end.
Right.
Like you're renting
$4,500 a
an
month for
excavator for
9 months.
$24,000 a year that you would have paid for in probably 6 years. 8
And
years.
if there's a major
And
water
you're
leak,
gonna
we
pay
have no way to fix
$24,000
it.
ongoing for however many years, and if the rate goes up, you're paying even more.
Yeah, that's what I just
I
don't
don't
wanna be
understand.
another council that's not solving the problem. Like, yeah, we have to pay for stuff.
Do we want to try and split these? One, we try and finance, get a, you know, we'll choose the one to finance here, and, you know, because this is 440,000, that's roughly, I did just a quick math, that's $70 or $60 on average of your tax bill for your 200,000 person. So these are the kind of, you know, so if we can pull that down to like 400,000 and lease for the year as an obligation for one of them, and then the next one we consider as a potential bond later in the year, and knowing these are gonna go out, then we have the math and kind of go into that next one, so we, again, have a plan in place to not have to keep incurring these costs.
I know that you had given us the amortization for some of these bonds, but these bonds, like Beachland Road, was done before I left, and I've been gone 10 years. So some of these bonds have got to be ending sooner rather than later.
Beachland, I think, was done this year.
Is this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like 2 or 3 years in it.
And Knowlton Park and
Knowlton Park, same
and
thing.
the Moore Community Center are the same.
Yep.
Those were all done before I left, so,
Yeah, those all end this year.
yeah. So I think your debt service is actually
Dropping.
dropping really quickly.
Yeah.
Because you've got new, you got 500,000 in new from 19 and,
And it might be, I don't know if fiscal, I think it's calendar, but I think this year, next year, and the next year, like,
It's just the 2023 GOB hits this year is the
Yeah, I
first year.
saw
That's the
that.
big one, so.
yeah, so kind of our debt service kind of is 3 years of pretty high, and then, so again, how you want to stack it, but yeah, we'll get to debt, and maybe I'll get some other questions going
Because it looks
forward.
like you got about 500,000 going away pretty quickly.
That's where the flow chart is gonna be.
Where's the $600,000
You look-
pump truck that was gonna be divided among 3
So
departments?
so
Where is
that's here too, in the 36,333, so that's, so most of that's in Mike's, in wastewater as an enterprise fund, so that's why as a capital from this year's request. Adam's portion of that is the vac truck,
36.
FY year, 107, 36,333.
And that first payment's deferred till next year, actually.
And so again, but to Michelle's point, like we can't really obligate it, but, that's the piece that would come out of taxing. Or you could put it off until the bond.
That's right, because the others are the.
Could we tax that piece with ARPA, Adam? Or Matt,
Which one?
the vac trucks,
You could potentially, yeah, ARPA the back truck up until
Can you shut
2026.
those windows so I can turn the air conditioning on?
No matter what this says, it's a $600,000 ticket, right?
yeah, over.
65 a year you're spending to hire, is that right?
Yeah, and we're putting it down at 35,000, but really, there's a lot of deferred maintenance. I mean, this will be a well-used, very helpful on a multiple fronts truck,
That's the back truck you're talking
the
about.
back truck,
Yeah, the back truck pays for itself fairly quickly.
especially because of all the stuff we don't have to, basically, it's a year
But
out.
it's 65,000 a year to hire it right now?
No, that's just to do his catch basins.
It's all the
That's not
catch.
including all the other stuff.
Well, how much are you paying now to do all the other stuff?
It wasn't really done, right?
So, yeah, I mean, I did the presentation, but, in my budget, you're probably talking 75,000 out of the different lines to pay for the stuff that I have to have done. And then,
I know I'm digressing, so I don't want to get too
Yeah,
crazy,
we
but I just
are.
wondered where it was in here.
so it's over $100,000 a year right now that she's gonna pay out the vortex to do everything that's supposed to be done.
And this is, the capital outlay from Adam is what would have to come out of the taxpayer public works on highway side of things. The rest comes out of wastewater's enterprise account.
And water.
Sorry, water, yeah.
So looking into finance for the loader versus renting, and then what did we do, where were we at on, we're just yes or no on the plow truck, is that where we're at?
The plow truck for potential bonds, consideration later this year.
So if we were to do the plow truck for potential bond consideration later this year, we still have to account for it in the budget?
No, not the plow truck. We'd have to account for the loader of what the lease is
Yeah.
gonna be. So Adam will look into the lease costs.
So we could do the plow truck later this year through a bond, is what?
Yeah, we just can't vote to do it without saying that's what we're gonna do. That's what I was saying,
Oh,
so.
okay.
So like, he can't go order it now, and then we make the decision to do
Yeah.
it later.
Yeah,
You gotta wait until we
We can
make the
kind of straw
decision to
poll it
purchase.
and,
Yeah.
okay, but
Yeah.
then but if that's, let's say, we say, yeah, why don't we look to bond it in the fall, back to my point, it's still, whether we pay for it now or we bond it in October, you're not getting it until the
The next
following
year.
year anyways, is that correct?
Yeah.
Mike seems,
My mental thought process going along with what Michelle was talking about, so if you guys decided that you wanted to say, do it right now, and you commit whatever that number is to the budget, but you know you're not gonna expend it in this year's budget, then next year you encumber it into that budget, then you already have the funding for it in next year's budget.
You'd expense it this year.
But we
and
still
then
have to
encumber
tax for it
next
this year.
but yeah, the problem is we still have to tax for
We're
it.
Tax
trying to find
problems this
things,
year.
we're trying to go down.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull 440 off.
Yeah, I think we should, my 2 cents is we should look into the finance versus renting for the loader, and then we should decide to bond the plow truck in the fall.
Or consider it.
And
Okay.
that helps us.
it makes sense, because what you're saying is true. You're either going to get it in June, of '25 or October of '25, and either way, no snow.
So we have to figure out a finance number for this.
Yeah, I mean, and if you did that, you could always say that in October and go to the bond bank, and if you're not gonna get it until then, but, I mean, that's kind of, yeah, it depends on what's going on. You can do the May bond bank too.
Yeah.
We can start looking into these things too, so
Yeah,
we really know
I
what our.
don't- Yeah, I don't think that's a.
But that would push
something
it to
for-
26.
Huh? I'm sorry?
That would push it to the year 26 that you would get it if you waited.
No,
until-
no, if we in the fall, we say, go ahead and order it, we're definitely we're gonna commit to funding it.
I see.
You
can
don't
do-
have to fund it in November.
I
The
see.
bond bank does twice a year, so you could do May
That
or
makes sense. Okay.
some other type of financing. I personally would like to do that just because we still just don't know what we have in the bank, in the general fund, and I understand financing the wheeler because no one wants to be without the wheeler in the wintertime because you lose a route, you know, then you get people calling you because the roads aren't plowed, they can't get to work, and that's another whole thing, but, we don't know what we have, and until we can get the accounts in order, we know, really good idea of our debt service, we have a really good idea of how the financing is going to be coming up and what we have, then we can make some of these decisions on some of these capital requests. And then it can be either bonded, or if we hopefully have money that can come out of the general fund or something like that, we'll know how we're gonna finance it definitely. And we'll have a better understanding of how we're gonna pay for it.
And even like, yeah, we can talk about the debt servicing and the this and the that, but until we have the reconcile number.
Exactly.
You know,
But you're
and the
not
reserve
saying not
account.
make any of these decisions.
No, I'm just saying, like, make the decisions on the ones that we really, really need to, like, priority, and then these other ones, not that the truck's not needed, but there's backup and other ways of doing it, but the ones that we can put off until the fall, until we were later in the fall, when we have our numbers, then make those decisions, I just think would be better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because it could go one way or the other. It could be, okay, we're posting the reconciliation and there's undesignated fund balance available or not, or this is the reserve strategy we recommend funding, so that will influence the bond strategy too.
And we also have ARPA funds that we have to commit by the end of the year, so, I mean, that comes into play too if we don't use it all up in this budget.
You can also, well, you can bond to increase reserves, but then it's taxable, which is not a great. But again, these are all questions, once we're finalized, we'll be able to do a little more on. And to your point, Michelle, because we have the rest of these too, and we're getting out of timing, I think that's the general orientation here, is for me too, is what do we really need by the end of the year to finance through tax dollars? And what can, I'm not saying no forever,
Yes.
but what can we live with for a bit until we're reconciled and go to the bond bank potentially and make a new decision with better data?
And is that what you that thinking is what you based your manager recommendations here on? Okay.
Yeah.
And we're looking at page 526A for your recommendations now.
Yes, yes. And then there was one last one for the truck body, for the plow truck add-on. And that is also my yes for now, but then Matt looked into it and we can ARPA this, and there's still a little bit left in the ARPA. And that one's like, if we don't do that, we down another plow truck right out.
So this is the spare truck being, in all fairness, it's the spare, but it's a 2005 International Paystar. It's mechanical, it's all pre-admissions, and it is just a workhorse. But being that it's 2005 and lived through many winters, the body that, is on the back of it is no longer usable.
But that 20,000 that we can use ARPA funds for gives that truck more life.
Yes, sir.
And
That
it's
makes
not
a lot of
on
sense.
this tax rate.
Can we switch it to another truck if
So-
this one dies?
Yes, absolutely. It's a wheeler body,
Oh, okay.
and we have 3 other wheelers there.
That can use it.
It's absolutely, and it's worth investing in the truck in the long run to save money.
And just, I know it's a smaller dollar one too, but this was the one that, when I originally cut.
Yes, it is.
It looked at me like I was a crazy town. So, yeah.
What is the stoplight? Where's the stoplight?
We don't need stoplights.
Okay.
We don't need no stinking.
This is what I blame Matt for. He cut it before it even got to your rounds.
That's right. Can write a
But it's
grant for that.
it's the mobile stoplights, right?
This portable
so you don't have
stoplights,
to
like when we needed the Surrey Road shut down, it
Right.
keeps 2 people out of the road.
It
not
was
a
so
parked way.
nice. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Again, that may be considered for, next
like
round when we know where we're at, right? Like, hey, how important is this? These aren't going away, and they're cataloged
Yeah, I
here.
was just curious.
I think that's it.
Well, so,
for-
so if you add up all the ones that can be used for ARPA, it adds to 198,000, we have that.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, these are all.
And that still leaves a little bit,
Less
just in
of a
case
cushion.
for something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas there's other things in the budget, even local roads can apply to this in some ways. Well, I guess this is the really big one. Sorry, I know we're running late, but this is what it is the road improvements at 1.129 million. Maybe, Adam, we table this for a second.
Yeah, that's fine.
I've had some conversations with Tammy. This is the one that, I think we can pull, at least my digital Charlie, like, to the end of the year, about 400,000 off this. We wouldn't necessarily have to commit, but I still have some more due diligence on what could be potentially ARPA for this, the priority list, the Red Bridge Road piece, what's potentially left on the GO bond for 2023. I want to have, this is a big one that, we also need road investments. And even for last year's accounting, like, Adam had, we talked about, there was a lot of roads that weren't done last year through the budget freeze and other things. So this is one that needs to be done. And kind of your point, Michelle, and like, what can we do by the end of the year? We need to do, and it's going to kind of freeze. But that would probably, all of that would jump to the front of my list on a bond on like infrastructure investments for this town. It doesn't take an engineering degree to know we need some road improvements. And I think I'll table it for a second because it'll be a long one.
If I can ask a question as you table it.
Yep.
Listening to the conversations we've had before about over $1 million was budgeted for roads, but only 400,000 was done. We're now talking about budgeting $1 million. How do we know that only 400,000? Is it a realistic number that we could actually do $1 million worth of roads? I agree roads need to be done.
So it was 1.9
What
was.
what caused that? We budgeted this much but did less than half.
A
Budget freeze.
Budget freeze.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't
So it
like,
wasn't
we don't have
capacity.
enough
Wasn't-
humans, and it
Spending
wasn't, we
freeze,
don't,
not a budget.
okay.
Yeah, spending.
Okay, that's a helpful clarification.
So we budgeted all this,
Okay.
Makes all the world of
Spend it.
difference,
Well,
doesn't it, right?
Yeah, it's like, why are
Yeah,
we
and-
overcommitting again?
And we'll get to this later,
Exactly.
I
thank
didn't
you.
want to be the bad guy in this, but throughout the reconciliation, we can't, I can't say that this money is good, that you didn't spend, hey, don't spend it this year. So we really, Adam, bless you, like, what do you need by the end of the year? There's some things that are grant match and that we have to do. Those are locked in. But then what on top of that is like, what do we think is a really critical priority and we might want to put on this year's tax rolls? What, could we consider, that would be next spring, as soon as it dries out, and this time around, like, having the cash analysis and where we're at, so that I don't come back and say, thanks, we taxed for it, but we didn't actually get to it there.
Right. I'm not saying don't do the road work, I'm saying budget for what we can actually get done.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to make one comment, if I may, before we move on. $1.1 million doesn't buy much road work anymore. Round numbers, the little piece of Christian Ridge Road was a complete rebuild, and it was around 1.5 million, and it was less than a mile, correct?
Yeah.
Is that right? So, just to put that in perspective, it doesn't buy a lot of money. It doesn't buy a lot of pavement, 1.1 million. And so, to speak to your bond issue, if the useful life is useful life 5 years of a relay?
On a paving project?
Yeah.
10 to 15, as long as the maintenance is
As
kept
long as we're not
up.
financing that for 30 years.
Yeah, we don't do that skinny mix, that sand
Yeah,
mix.
yeah, so, it just doesn't buy you much, so that leans towards the borrowing for the period of the useful life.
And there has been, Adam's done some stuff on like the conditions of roads and their red, yellow, greens and where they're at. And, I think let's get through what we really prioritize for this year. And the Red Bridge Road is separate from that too, so I think we would be.
And don't forget, the state's coming through our town to do a big gift to us. And that's gonna really help our town. And if there was, I'm not saying put off roads, but we are having a paving project come through town at the state's expense this year. Two?
Several,
Surrey Road as well.
I apologize.
Surrey Road as well.
Okay, so we've got a lot of paving going that we're not paying for, correct?
Well, it's not
Well,
really
we're
a
paying
gift, though, isn't it? It's what they're supposed to do? Isn't it their
Feels like
job?
Well, we're not paying, well,
It's kind of
call
a,
it any way you want, but it's more than I've seen in many years to come through town.
yeah, and we have to pay, we're, in the council meeting next, we're approving the final numbers on the things we do have to pay for as part of that project.
But it's minuscule compared to the size of the project.
But as you're saying, Steve, in terms of road maintenance this year, it will be more than just the 1.1 in terms of DOT and others. But part of the other thing, and just kind of over the long term of the next year, once this is done, I really want to switch to Public Works, prepping for bond, and a holistic strategy of all those things, and that beautiful PowerPoint presentation, plus more detailed financial numbers and whatnot. So, but what can we get to now, put on the tax rolls for this year, but let's, just so we can get to public safety, and we also have water, wastewater, which maybe we go through a little quicker because they're enterprise accounts, but I do want to get to public safety too.
So is it the only time tonight we're talking about the capital improvement requests?
No, we'll come back to I think we'll come back to
As
especially the
opposed to
roads.
the departments will come back?
Yeah, and we're gonna talk more through the departments on their things as well. So, yep. How about Reggie? Or actually, no, water. Yeah, water's first. Yep, Reggie.
Thanks, Adam.
What was section? Section 13. 557. 560. Sorry.
What is it, 560?
560. Yeah. We haven't changed this except for we're gonna working with Carrie and Nate on the payroll actuals and updating those. That's part of that process, which may change kind of the, just pull into what they were last year, what they would be this year. No change, and then to give you all a recommendation on the COLA piece. And that was it. I didn't really have any additional changes here.
Question for you.
Yep.
The first page, 559, you're listing the half-time utilities clerk. Is that in this budget? Because we're looking at.
Well, yeah, I guess I should say that was it's also recommended to hold. But
So is that in this budget, so the money should come out of it?
Yeah, the half utilities clerk on
Oh,
all of your clerks and kind of how we're gonna back that out. I think we'll kind of put that in the change log, which I'm gonna have a whole separate sheet for you guys to say, here's all the requests, benefits, payroll, this pulled out of this entirely. I don't know if that's accounted for here. Did you put in that, Reggie?
I put it in mine, yes.
You put in some payroll.
Yep.
So
Yeah, so we should be able to pull that.
pull that
out.
down a bit. And that's kind of across the board here, is I gotta pull those out,
Yeah.
plus benefit increases were added, as if we added all of them,
Yeah.
so. Plus a 3% COLA, so I gotta pull that out.
The only thing I didn't add from it was any kind of an increase because I wasn't sure of what the union contract was.
because their negotiations next year, first.
Do you have a piece of the back truck too, Reggie?
He does, it's backed out already. If you look on the details page, second from the bottom, the capital outlay, it says capital outlay reserve, which we'll rename that, but that's where he had all his capital.
Oh, last page.
You took out the truck lease, the 24,000.
That's the
the-
back
that
truck,
goes-
so we need to pull that
And we
back.
took out the back truck, I believe. Because it was 136,000, so no, the back truck needs to be backed out of that too. But the 24,000 for the truck leases, because he had 2 truck leases that he was asking for, 2 pickup trucks.
But I think we would move forward with the back truck, we keep it in there.
Yes.
No, we're not gonna get it for a while, but it seems like council is good on the back truck. It's not gonna hit this year, mostly wastewater. I'm probably gonna, and then Reggie's share, which is the one for the taxes, we'll try and ARPA that as well. We're still within our budget.
Yeah, the back truck makes, so we
Yeah,
don't
it
pay
pays
for
for
it
itself.
this year, and it pays for itself, and it's really cool.
It is really
That's what I can say.
We have some,
It's a triple threat.
We were considering your business idea as well for the back truck.
Yeah, we got business
Yeah,
ideas.
Mike's, we have I'll tell you offline.
I can't wait to hear more.
Oh, yeah.
Something up.
With Mike's-
If I may contribute to the back truck conversation,
Please do.
in my capital, I have $20,000 for tank cleaning. If the vac truck is getting approved, you can deduct 9,431 from that,
Because we can tank leak with the
because
vac
we
truck.
can use the vac truck.
But the problem is we won't be getting it until next year's budget.
I can wait
We
another
can
year.
check
You
lead
can? Okay,
times,
so-
Yes.
by the way, so we're not paying for it until next year, but when we can order it, under the lease agreement, you can order it and pay your first payments deferred to you. So the process that I expect is gonna happen is, we can't just go out and buy the truck that we looked at. It's against the procurement policy. So we would have to go out with an RFP to other companies, get some bids in, and as part of the bid request, we would ask them what the lead time is on getting the new truck. And so it would be a consideration for all of us on, if it's a little bit of extra money, but we get the truck 6 months earlier, is that worth it? But that's the discussion that would end up happening after we got bids put out, prices back in, and we could see the picture of what we're looking at. This is based, this money is based on the truck that we had come up and we demoed it, and we loved it, but unless the council's saying you want a sole source, the intent is that we would, look at other vendors as well, so. Does that make sense?
If we're not done with the vac truck, keep talking.
No, that's,
Okay.
if you got a
No,
vac
I
truck.
think, just to your point, yes, man, that's something that's always the best policy is to put it out, see
Yeah.
what you get.
Coolest factor will be one of the
Oh,
criteria.
yeah, and then I expect a ride.
Yeah, absolutely, we got you.
Get them a back truck, let's do it.
Two
Get outside of the
questions.
water
One
main
of them
break,
is,
do
why are we talking about, this one we wouldn't have to pay till next year, but the highway trucks, we would have to pay this year?
Taxes versus enterprise funds.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's,
Okay.
and these two budgets, actually, yeah, these are ones that, we can tinker with, but we're not gonna, this isn't gonna be in driving down the mill or.
Right, well, I pay my sewer and water bills,
That's true,
so
too.
I'm happy to have those be saved.
And sorry, you said 9,000 on that point.
Yes, 9,000.
Out of the what?
Tank
So,
cleaning.
yeah, for the tank cleaning, so I put 20,000.
Okay, back that up.
Yep.
So, the other question is, what is public fire protection for your revenue and private fire protection?
Fire hydrants.
So what's public versus private?
More about that.
So, so the city pays the water department for use of the hydrants, it's for the water that comes out, it's a ready service type deal.
Okay, so when water, for when water, based on the water that's actually used,
Yes.
what is public versus private?
So the private would be, Jonathan Bates, he's got hydrants.
I think we went wrong there. My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the city pays for the capacity, not the water use.
Right,
Well, yeah, so it's
it's a flat fee.
to have
to clarify that.
That
Yeah,
makes
have
more
the
sense.
amount.
the availability of the water, it's not
Capacity,
metered.
Not the
availability,
drawdown,
right,
yeah.
not the water use.
Okay, and then
It's not
private
metered
is
or
either
anything.
private roads or if somebody has one on there.
Yeah, so if a developer,
Go ahead.
if a developer comes in and
Okay,
builds an infrastructure and wants to keep their system private, they would have to pay for those fire hydrants.
okay. Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And there were some big insurance increases, I think,
Yeah.
discussed at the last meeting. And just because I know we have, feel free to look in and give me questions, but I do want to get to public safety in their capital pieces. If we go to Mike's, maybe wastewater on 455?
You wanna do the wastewater? Wastewater's really
457.
easy.
Or 550, 550.
Thanks, Reggie.
The only thing that I did notice is we are gonna have an increase in rates. You're budgeting for a rate increase of 1.5%,
Yes.
and that's just because of the,
There's gonna be the water treatment plant upgrades.
because of that
which-
debt service?
And you're allowed to do this without having to do the PUC stuff.
1.5 the highest you can do without a rate case to be.
And so we're trying to build up, so to Steve and others' points, to stagger that potential increase on that, on what it is, while we can do so and not have to go above and beyond. But that's a reasonable rate increase and, knowing what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
I
Sorry, I
think-
didn't mean to call you back.
No, and it's a big one just in general, maybe for the public and anybody's poor souls are listening to this. The water, we all know we need to, it's an aging infrastructure with wood and curtains. We're gonna have a workshop later this summer. There's been a bunch of work on financing that piece. And we'll talk a lot more about that. That's not necessarily relative to the bonding piece, because we already the team's been working on that for 3 years. We're more now on that, so, but it's a big upgrade for Ellsworth Water, I think. Wastewater, I tried to get rid of the back truck originally. Because I was trying to be equitable with cuts and other things, even though I liked it, but then I realized the savings weren't, I was actually kind of like, in some ways, paying more over the long term for the principle of cutting something, so that was not there. Also, I know this 35 in the capital outlay reserve, you've been seeing that in the reserve accounts that we talked about previously. I really like how Mike has done that, to kind of kept that piece there in case something big happens. That's something to hedge against. I could see doing that kind of across the board in future years, is making sure all of our big departments are putting in that kind of thing. The conferences and meetings as well, and we talked about that. I tried to kind of cut those, but he's already got that mostly cut to what their certifications are pretty straightforward on what his team needs and he needs to stay certified in wastewater. So same thing with Reggie Riley. We didn't talk about that, but Reggie's actually pretty good at his certifications and making sure they're all staying on top of that. I think he's also wastewater certified. I think Reggie's also wastewater certified.
He is wastewater certified, yes. Class 1 or anything. So the only thing that's left in capital, because we took the truck leases out, and by the way, I did go and get pricing on if we were to purchase trucks outright, so I do have that information if anybody needs that at some point. We can do an analysis on what the 5-year lease would be as opposed to paying the outright cost. But the only thing left in capital is every 3 years, we do a major service on the dewatering centrifuge. And so this year is the year that it needs to be done again. And that's 28,000, I budgeted 30, because there's usually some extra stuff involved with that. But it's a single point of failure, and it generates roughly $500,000 in revenue, and if it goes down, it's a serious problem, not just for me, but for all of the businesses around that come to us. We actually we're shutting down for a day tomorrow because the plant's full and we can't process it fast enough. So I shut all the trucks down for a day so we can catch up, because we're taking it really left and right now. And so, yeah, the centrifuge is a critical piece of equipment. And we need to keep it tip-top shape until the future capital project we've already received funding for allows us to upgrade the dewatering process.
And Mike and I have talked about the wastewater plant depreciation and kind of why that triggered a bond downgrade. I think maybe there might be a separate presentation to talk about that. We're looking into that with some of our consultants and a revaluation of kind of why that occurred. And I know, Steve, you're interested in this too. So it's something, again, I think we're going to be using the bond bank for a while, which isn't tied to our rating necessarily, but we've got to get that changed, and I think it could be more of just an administrative, really dig into this.
Could I politely bang heads with you a little bit?
Sure.
This has been something that burns at me. I just want to throw it out, and I don't expect a discussion. I would like to see if we take outside sewer that we close the gap with this deficit here. If you could raise your prices on outside sewer. And I'm understanding that many contractors are paying different rates. I would think that it would be a great time to level that rate so everyone pays the same per gallon. Those are the two things that I would just push for a little bit, and it's been a pet peeve of mine. I'm not gonna beat it to death, but I need to mention that everybody paying the same fee, I think, is fair. And not wearing our plant out in advance is important. When I got on the council, I saw the nasty losses that existed, and there's been many comments about that. But for 2 audit reports, I have asked the biggest problem financially in the city of Ellsworth, and both times they have told me the wastewater treatment plant is taking money to survive. I just need to reiterate that again, that this is a great time to consider raising the truck delivered amounts. I'm assuming that the centrifuge has a lot to do with truck delivered sewer.
So a single point of,
Could I just finish, and then
Sure.
you can hit me with whatever you want, and I don't want to make it a big discussion, I just need to make that public. Secondly, or thirdly, in your defense, I've been battling about this, and I only learned this year that you're operating without revenue for all the city buildings, that's dumping into your plant without revenue. And so, to your credit, I didn't know that until this year, and I kept poking, and so the financials weren't 100% correct. If you're absorbing all of the city building sewer, the water department, through PUC regulations, is receiving and showing that revenue on their budget. And the sewer department is not, is my understanding, and I've only learned that this year. So there's a big gap here that, to your department's credit, that you're doing work without money where the water department is showing it in their budget. So that's.
and we pay the water department.
Right, I mean, but that's just something to consider,
Yeah.
because for 2 years in a row, I battled about this, and I did not like these big losses. And wearing out the plant ahead of time, that bothers me, but now I learned through this year, thankfully, through a meeting that we had, to do with a high bill, that, you know, all the city departments are dumping sewer in that plant, and there's no accounting of it. Am I still correct?
Yeah, no, the schools, nobody pays the sewer bill.
But yet, water is accounted in their budget
They
because
all
of
pay
PUC.
sewer. They all pay water bills, yeah.
Yeah, so just,
Yep.
I want that out.
So, and, yeah, we don't need to go through the whole debate
Right,
again, Steve, but
exactly.
I think something that will actually make you a little more happy is, so the shortfall hadn't really been addressed prior to this year. Me and Glenn had a brief conversation over it, but I had never been able to get into the weeds of it until I really started doing this stuff. So the auditor, I spoke to the auditor, we had a conversation about it. Big piece of it is, you know, when the new plant was built, we took on a huge amount of depreciation. And so he recommended that we do what's called a condition assessment of our infrastructure. Because we just redid the Water Street pump station. We're getting ready to redo the High Street pump station. The plant's not that old. So that, if you do a condition assessment, it can help offset your depreciation and actually make your depreciation significantly less, which would then drop that loss from the audits to significantly less. So we are looking at that. I've already talked to Warden Kern, and I actually think we already did some of that work as part of the other work projects that we've done. So it won't be a full brand new thing. It'll be taking some data that we've already generated and then adding to that. So that piece, I think, helps with your concern, Steve, on the depreciation. Secondly, also, there is a 2% rate increase in there, and that also is to try and help fund some of this deficit that we have, to show the bond bank that we are making attempts to do something, and we're not just sitting there carrying this debt anymore. We're gonna actually try to help eliminate it. So we're doing the code, we're doing the condition assessment, we're doing the, a little bit of a rate increase for the usual 2%, and we're also doing a 1 cent across the board increase for the septic users. All the deliveries that we get, so, like I said, that's probably a $550,000 gross revenue stream. And then, really quickly, so the difference in rates, there's one vendor that pays less than the other vendors, and this was something that we created back when we opened the plant, where if you guaranteed that you would bring us 1 million gallons of septage for the year, then we would give you a more favorable rate. So any volume user that can do that, that's where we ended up with that. So, it would be a decision of the council if you wanted me to reverse that policy. But, you know, our biggest, so we do roughly 6 million gallons a year, and our biggest vendor probably accounts for about 1.5 million gallons of that. So, I hope that helps allay some of the concerns that you have. To know that we're gonna figure out this deficit and we're gonna get rid of it. Part of this deficit that I may need help from Michelle and Tammy is, like years ago when I first started working here, the wastewater department wasn't making enough money to cover its operations costs. And so we were having to be subsidized. And I'm thinking maybe because there wasn't a debt service created back to pay for that, maybe that's where it's creating some of that number.
Could be, and that was back when you had RBC shafts,
Yeah.
so we were replacing those things
Yes.
all the time.
Yeah.
And at that time, the council would not borrow for anything, really. And so we were paying for those $300,000 a piece, and there were 3 of them?
It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them.
5 of them. It seemed like
roughly
one broke every
$100,000
year.
a piece every time one broke, and they
Yeah.
broke.
They broke often.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think that's gonna be a piece of it. But, I mean, the wastewater department's in really good shape now. And, I mean, if you look at what's in front of you to the bottom right, and you look at our position right now, we're plus money. We have healthy reserves. And, you know, so this is the last piece, I think, to get us where we-
And let's talk more, Steve. I really
Yeah,
do want
yeah.
to, because it is in some ways an accounting piece that we need a lot more information, and I want to come back to you on it. I was surprised when I learned about it, and I think Casey, I'm sorry, for Nancy and Patrick too. I know you weren't here for some of like the 2022 audit recommendations from the auditor, and I had him take me through it. And it was interesting on sort of how, it explains more things about the reconciliation too, on, you know, what you're showing, and then all of a sudden these big negatives that pull out for the cash balance, and wow, that occurs. It's relative to this, and then there's a separate piece relative to this.
And to just throw out one thing, and then we can move on. I've been banging heads with Mike since I've been here over that problem. And then bang, I learned that there's services to our city coming out of his hide that needs to be recognized, because he's not taking in money for all the sewer that the city buildings are sending. So that needs to be considered.
And the users who are paying, could they pay more because of that?
That's the question.
And last thing, and I know it doesn't affect the tax rate because it's, you know, it's an enterprise account, but, you know, the half salaried person we're pulling out, Mike's, and then the trucks, this was one where Mike's and potentially Reggie's and some of Adam's, on like our fleet that could be electrified through federal grants. And that would be our whole fleet, but there are trucks in their categories that would be sufficient within our landmass to charge and build the infrastructure and then potentially not have to do bigger leases on it. Yeah, I want to get a full accounting of that too.
May have to put new seats in the F-150.
I do
Mike?
want to learn more about that.
Thanks for the discussion.
another time.
The largest line item that's not financing, the power, is that mostly powering the centrifuge, or is that?
No, the biggest power consumption at any wastewater plant, that's what we call activated sludge, is the blowers. We have 3 turbo blowers that we use, they're the heart of the plant. You have to aerate, the aeration tanks are where we grow microorganisms to consume the waste. And so without the air, you would get more. So that's the biggest power pull in every wastewater plant.
Aeration
is-
blowers.
Is the aeration blowers, yeah, pumps, whatever you call them. They provide the air to the aeration tanks to aerate everything and keep the microorganisms alive, to make everything happen.
Cool.
So, and we actually are the biggest beneficiary of solar credits. It's dropped if you look at previous years, we've dropped our power from, I think, at one point it was 265,000. I think the request this year is 225.
Good.
So, we're working.
Can we get the bond schedule for this one, these two, Nate?
Hmm?
Can we get the bond schedule for his bonds too?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we'd have.
I think that'll also help. You've got some big bond payments there that look like they might be ending, and that'll definitely fund that depreciation. Because it is funny that I think when you talk about those ratings, because there was a big discussion when we built this plant, because it was supposed to be 13 million, it ended up being 23 million. And that was one of the discussions that we had when we went to bond on this, is that, and with our bond counsel at the time, was what are we gonna do about this high depreciation? Because the amount of money that we would have had to increase the rate for sewer to cover that depreciation in the budget was, people wouldn't be able to afford the sewer. So, I don't, it's still 10 years later, or 12 years later, I don't know how long it was. It's still the same discussion, and I think sometimes when the bond raters come through, some put more of an eye on that than others, and I think that's one of the issues that happened.
And we'll
Just
talk
for-
more, that seems to be
Yeah.
what it is. It's an
Yeah.
accounting thing, that's why we'll look into sort of the revaluation or,
Yeah,
and kind of see where we're at. Is it,
Where we going?
we're gonna go to,
public safety.
public safety, and we're gonna start with Scott.
And what page?
So, public safety, let's see here.
Public safety is 181.
I don't have too much for Scott. Section, yeah, 191, fire department budget.
Section 3.
So I only had 2. Scott also has excellent budgets and I think kept separate Excel sheets over the last year that have paid dividends as he built his new one for his actuals. I did reduce the training to 23,000 from 27,000. And I think we spoke, it's not going to necessarily, obviously certifications, anything like that for both fire and this was that, if it does come up that it would need to be done,
Can I ask one question? Because I saw that John's here. Do we have
Oh,
the water
We
Branch Lake?
did, yeah, I think there is a,
Before we go, I'm sorry.
No, you're
I saw
fine.
John there, we skipped over water.
where is that? That is
It's in water, but it's water resource protection, underwater.
water supply protection, 571.
Come on up, Joe.
There's nothing from, there's no change.
I don't think I had any changes on this one.
There's no
either.
change.
Yeah.
There's no changes on it?
I wasn't complaining, I was enjoying the show.
That's right, you look like you were enjoying your day,
No, and I had,
so no problem.
John's also, you're kind of also backup on water. You have a class certification for.
Pardon me?
You're also backup on water. I didn't realize until recently as well, right? You had the certification for.
Yes,
The water.
water, wastewater, whatever you want.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I'm learning about this squad is they're very well trained. I think these are like, I don't know, the professors in public works in a lot of ways. So, really been interesting for me.
And Dan was not a firefighter yet.
We can make it happen.
Protection. Yeah.
What page, Charlie?
574. Yeah, no big office supplies, no big training budgets to pull from.
Yeah,
Seem to be brass taxes on this one.
we're gonna have to figure out, sure.
Is your revenue, oh, that's right, it's not in here yet. So we need to include revenue in here.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Say it again?
John?
Your revenues up.
Oh, no, go ahead. Are I see that there's 4,300 for the host site expense. Are we getting $4,300 worth of value from the people that are using those sites?
According to my calculations, no. We haven't ever since we built them, what, 8 years ago?
Out of
No, we
promise.
haven't.
Yeah, they were out of a promise we built those, and they never came through.
Oh, they came through, it's just the money is not, the amount of money we spent on those RV sites, approximately $100,000. The amount of volunteer work we got, we've amortized it, we've accounted for it. It just isn't there compared to the amount we put in for the systems.
Yeah.
So you might have calculated 100-year payback if you look at it optimistically enough, but realistically, no. But it is a cooperative agreement we have with the state to operate the state park host system. And when it works, it's wonderful, and we combine and the system works well. But it's not gonna pay for itself.
Well, I mean, at least the $4,350 a year that you're paying, I mean, is it offsetting more than the $4,350 that you're paying? Because
Slightly.
you've got an expense here.
Yes, slightly, but it all depends. We don't have a lot of fixed costs. It's costs as used, i.e. water, power, that kind of thing. And so if we don't have a lot of hosts coming in, they don't use a lot. So the expenses versus the income are commensurate, but you're never going to get a payback if, of the construction costs.
Yes.
The actual operation costs, yes, they pay for themselves, simply because we don't have a lot of cost, we don't.
So is it offsetting your payroll part-time at all?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I put a figure in there for that.
Yeah.
And that's what that's offsetting when we get that.
Okay.
This year, we haven't got any hosts yet, but we may still, because the day is young and the season is early. But we do offset by thousands of dollars.
Okay.
But I don't try to back it out into the payback of the investment we
Oh,
made
no,
in
it's-
that. I did once, but the numbers were too discouraging.
Pretty
so I
sad,
stopped
yeah.
doing it.
For the
Thank you.
public record, can we just describe what a host site is?
Well, host site.
I'm sorry.
No, it's a great interest.
I've seen
No
it.
problem.
Yeah.
You know, we, with the agreement 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the city agreed for the state to build a state-of-the-art boat launch on Branch Lake, in the middle of Branch Lake, was that we would inspect boats, every boat that came into the lake. We have essentially done that, and to ameliorate that cost, the city decided to build 3 host sites, because there's a nationwide program called a state park host system, where people in exchange for room for their RVs will do work around that state park. The Branch Lake State Park is no different. When we get hosts in, and we've had many, they help by inspecting boats for us, and that reduces the amount of pay that we have to pay out for paid staff to do that same thing. So it's a win-win. The state park gets a host. They have people there to look after the state park. We get staff to help inspect boats. So and the hosts love it because they think it's a great combination. They get a free room for their RVs all summer compared to a commercial concept.
And they have water and sewer hookups?
They have water and sewer. That is what we pay for. That is our major costs, water, sewer, and electricity.
Okay.
But do they still share those, do those people still also work at Lemoyne? Or are they now just
No,
for us?
no, they're dedicated just for
Just for this one?
Branch Lake State Park.
Because when it started, they made us share, which was not the promise that was made when we built it.
It soon evolved that Lemoyne is too far away to be practical, so they basically, everything's been apportioned to us.
Okay.
And that's what a host park is. It's an RV site for the state park host system.
And did you say you're not getting enough volunteers?
We
service
haven't got any
hosts?
yet, but each year it's different. Some year we will have all 3 RV sites full. This year we don't have any yet, but we may. It is run by the state park system. One big problem they have is they have a new park manager every year, so we have a continuity issue. But the concept is the same throughout the country, so those people who enjoy this type of lifestyle are aware of the different places out there. And we just haven't had any takers this year yet.
And we'll have to plug in revenue. I don't think it's going to be what brings us back, but.
I don't think it's gonna, I won't rescue us.
All right, well,
That's where all the money was.
Hey, I'm glad to have some in the plus column tonight, though. We got a couple in the plus. We got a couple in the
We
plus.
have a couple grants, but again, they just ameliorate the money that's spent.
And we'll, any more questions? We'll go to fire, which I think was also in the plus column. Maybe in the negative. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Looking to get out there and finish like some.
Oh, Scott, yes, sorry, sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
All right, what page are we on
We're
now?
never going to public, I just.
192. 192.
192.
192.
Thank you.
So, and we're gonna be in this section and then also in that capital sheet. Probably should just had you all not put in reminders to check it out, but you're good. So, the training reduction is in there, and again, sort of in the general, holding off on the trucks and leasing. I know this isn't necessarily electric, but maybe considering for bonding later in the year. You know, so I brought that from 14,004 down into as a potential consider later on. But this is, I think that the fire department is, they're using hand-me-downs now, and they, they're getting older, and I think we do need a truck here. Unfortunately, I don't think this is not an electrification one. But I had some, I sent an email on to Scott. He had sent me kind of a funny one back. I'm like, Charlie, not for Maine, it's for fire. We need them to make sure they run all the time. So, but this was a tough one. I'm trying to be equal across when I send the trucks and the leases, and we're going to consider that later on. But I do think that it is a need, which is why it's a no. But this is what I would consider as a future bonding process. So send it over to the chief if you have anything else.
I think, Charlie and I have discussed this quite a bit. I think the only thing to note about the request for the lease was, currently right now, the fire chief and the fire inspector are sharing a vehicle. That's a very difficult place to be, especially when I have to be in specific places at specific times, and he needs to be at specific places at specific times. And trying to adapt a schedule between an administrator and an inspector is very difficult to do. The inspector, when I was hired, before he was hired, the original inspector, Mike Haney, had a vehicle. The new inspector assumed that vehicle when he was here. When he went upstairs to code and was removed out of the fire department as part of a contract negotiation, the vehicle went with him up to code. When he came back downstairs from code, the vehicle stayed with code, and the inspector no longer had a vehicle. So between the deputy chief and the chief having a vehicle, and now we have an inspector with no vehicle, we've had to be adaptable to try and make sure that the fire inspector is able to go out and do what he needs to do for the city, and us be able to do what we need to do, and we need to be response capable 24 hours a day. So if I got an inspector who's on the other side of town in my vehicle, I cannot leave to respond to an incident if I need to. And I don't respond to every incident, and neither does my deputy. We respond to high-level incidents that we need to be at to oversee that. And so this makes it really difficult for us. And I understand where we're at with the budget and why it was a maybe not now, but I think it's something for the council to think about is this was a vehicle that was originally assigned and it was taken away from the inspector when he moved back downstairs to the fire department. And now it's creating a hardship on the administration to share a vehicle.
Is it the sole vehicle that code has now, or do they have multiple?
No, code only has one vehicle, the fire department has two, one for the deputy chief and one for the fire chief.
And shared with the fire code.
There have been times when all three employees have been squeezed into that Silver Explorer to go out and do inspections.
Bless you.
So,
I've seen that.
This fire inspection doesn't, those are scheduled, those aren't
The fi-
emergencies, correct?
the fire inspections are scheduled, those are
So
scheduled.
is there any,
But he is also response capable.
any thought of personal reimbursement on personal vehicles? Or is it
So in the past, that has been
slide
done.
through a year or
It's
something?
been not looked at very highly because of personal insurance, especially when that inspector needs to be able to respond to an emergency. So responding in your own personal vehicle is not typically covered by your personal vehicle insurance.
Are there medical supplies in the vehicles? Do they have that kind of response capability as
Mhm.
well?
Mhm.
So-
Yep.
That, I was late to this discussion, I was in the bathroom, but that 14,400, that's that line item we're talking about, that vehicle lease?
Yep. So I understand the, maybe not now, but I want to make sure that we have this conversation, understand that this is why it was brought up, this is why it was being discussed. We brought this up in March when we had the original discussion, and that's why.
Is that a lease to own, or is that a replacement every 5 years?
It's the same program that the police department uses, it's the same exact vehicle, so it's a 5 years. It's
Is
5
there-
years.
Is there a way that we can look at a vehicle, because I mean, it's not like they need, you know, like, the police department puts hundreds of thousands of miles on in
Mhm.
5 years, and this inspector wouldn't. Is there any way we could look at just financing a vehicle for 5 years, and then it's something you could have for probably 10? Instead of
I'm sure we
changing it
could,
up?
I'm sure we could.
I
I'm
think
sure
that
we
would make
could.
more sense on something like that than it would, like what the police department has.
Right. And for the fire inspector, yes, I could see that happening. As we move down the line, my vehicle needs to be replaced. The deputy chief's vehicle's gonna do, they're 2017s.
Yeah.
They've already got 120+ thousand miles on them. So they're
Yeah.
And not to
a
put-
water pump issue waiting to happen.
That's why I think that if we can finance these on separate cycles,
Right.
well, you kept your vehicle for 10 years or 9 years at least.
Mm.
If you finance a vehicle for 4 years and keep it for 10, it's a lot cheaper than leasing a vehicle for every 5 years forever.
Yeah, and there is a little bit, and Sean's our lease expert, like, it's kind of
Yeah.
a misnomer in some ways, because it's like, it is in some ways, those leases are kind of financing, because they do
Correct.
pull back in the value. So it's not like if I lease a private vehicle, and then it's 3 years and I get zero
I
back.
can't hear you. Oh, you have a microphone.
Sorry. It is, and Sean, and we'll get more on, he's our lease expert around here.
Yeah.
But I think it's a bit of a misnomer, because you do get money back from the cost of the vehicle for the lease. It's not like a private lease where you pay 3 years and then you give back at zero.
Yeah, but you get 5 years free, you know, at least, if you finance it for 4 years and 5 years, because there's not a lot of mileage. They put so much mileage on there, there's no value to those at the end of 5 years. I mean, there's a little bit, but not.
Well, they get some back, I mean, well, it depends on their, well,
Yeah.
Sean can talk more about it. but
Yeah,
They get
but if
30.
you're gonna keep you guys never keep a vehicle 10 years, you can't. You'd
No.
have 300,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, I lease my vehicle, but that's because I trade every 3 years, and I couldn't.
Yeah, but you also don't get money back from your lease.
I do get money back from my
Yeah.
lease.
Oh, you do after
Oh,
the
sure
3
I
years?
do, yeah.
So, but to back up your comment, that is the plan, is that to get into a cycle. So it's one this year, one next year, one the year after. So we're into that
So
rotating
you're into those
schedules.
rotations, yeah.
Right. You know, that's why I didn't come and ask for 3 vehicles. I only suggested the one in order to get us back to where we should be.
But that's what I think, that's like, the finance office can look at that compared to, and what that would be in equity
Yep.
on the lease.
Get you an
What
accounting
it would
and-
be to financing one and keeping it for 10 years. That's the type of thing that I think we could.
Maybe we'll do that in the bond, consider that later in the year. The cycle, get a little more due diligence on it. And then plus, not to preview too much, but and as part of capital and a 1 and 5 year kind of capital improvements plan is what I'd like to kind of see and put together for that bond assessment. Because there's apparatus stuff with fire too. We got, it's, it's not just there's some other ticket items.
Yeah, and we're working on it. That's not a presentation for this fiscal year, but we are working, as we had that discussion before, we're already working on a process on developing a plan for our fire apparatus, because they're old and they're falling apart, and we're starting to get into almost a state of emergency with our vehicles. So,
Switching back to capital side of fire, 526A. So, this is in the yes, but ARPA, kind of, we've talked about this before, side of things. There's really 3 things really under fire, but the one in facilities. I'll wait till everybody's at that page. But the fire department led remediation at 63,500. My recommendation is yes, but ARPA, so that it's not, again, this would be something that I'm pulling off of the mill rate for this year and onto the ARPA piece. 12,500 for the compressed air extension, the EMS advanced life support, paramedic equipment, and the jaws of life, all of which are in the health and safety and public safety piece. But not on the mill rate itself. So there's those things. I don't. That was it for that one. Anything else for the chief?
I just have one question. With all of the new vehicles that the city has, isn't there some vehicle that could be used in some department for this for this year? I mean, it seems like you see a lot of new vehicles out there in the city of Ellsworth. And is there some department that is not using one that could get us through this?
not,
I got dibs on the next one.
Just sold the van.
I mean, the code is in the same situation we are. Code's running a used vehicle also. So we're all used, for our 2 departments, we're using used vehicles. So, I don't know what
I'm not
else
saying that,
there
I'm
is.
just saying,
Right.
isn't there, can we look throughout the departments to see if there's something that could get utilized for a 1-year period? I'm just
we
asking.
can, I can make the request.
Well,
Yeah,
we can take a look. There's not a lot of vehicles that, there are a lot of vehicles in the city that are due for replacement. That's the biggest issue. And, that's gonna be the struggle moving forward. So it doesn't matter what department we're pulling it from, whether it's, and I don't wanna say, water, public works or anything. There's not a lot of departments for us to pull vehicles from.
Well, this is actually something that needs an overall assessment, because if you really want to talk about the city's fleet, that's actually the opposite of what you're talking. Because if you look at the trucks, the pickup trucks that the public works people are driving, they're all hand-me-downs. Some of them, I don't even know they get inspected.
And this one
You
could.
got these 2 guys driving vehicles, they got 120,000 hand-me-down police cruisers. You've seen my Ford F-150. So, the narrative that there's a lot of new city vehicles riding around is, I don't think, accurate. And typically, I don't think the council nor the department heads would request vehicles that are just gonna be not used so we can let somebody else use them. So I understand completely where you're coming from, Steve, in terms of trying to keep this mill rate down and reduce costs in this budget, but I think that I just feel really strongly that narrative that's going out to the public that we're driving a bunch of new vehicles around is not a correct narrative. And so,
And I should also just say, it's one of the reasons I'm holding on the fleet as much as possible. Some of the really big ticket fleet stuff in public works that can't be electrified, but also, it's what these programs are for, is to potentially replace. Now, we have some troubles because we live very far north, so electric's not great
Can you
for
explain that to me?
Yeah, there's
I mean the part about living north.
Oh, the electrification, it's just, these vehicles can't, and 97 square miles, so we can't have police and fire on vehicles like that, because they could break down. And then you've got a
You gotta
non-usable
recharge, it
vehicle.
takes longer.
But I mean, I have an electric vehicle, and yes, it gets less mileage when it's cold, but I wouldn't say like, I can't have it here, it's perfectly fine.
Well, take like Public Works, they tried this, and, because I did research this a bit, and had some arguments with the team, and even in fire and other things, and like, they tried it in New York City, they got a massive federal pilot program to outfit all their snowplow trucks, and it's just, those things are running 24, like they're running. And sometimes, like, the police obviously definitely can't be that, because you're running way too much. You'd have to double your fleet to really charge enough for how much they're using. But there are areas where it could make sense, like, which is why I kind of bring that up. Some of the fleet can't be done that way, but the highway, or the public works trucks, some of these other ones, your standard F-150, that's gonna be enough within it.
Yeah, so it actually doesn't have to do with living in Maine, it only has to do with vehicles that need to be on all the time.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, it depends on which one. We could be on all the time and have enough capacity, and the 97 square miles kind of digs things too. But if we lived in Arizona and could, in an extended range, 400 miles, we could be sure that that fire truck's not going to go out. In Maine, with the charging and this and that, like, and then the backup, and that thing has to be. We can't take that risk.
Yeah, and it's not like driving a car either.
Yeah,
'cause
exactly.
There's a
And-
reason
and,
they're diesel and, yeah.
It's tough. There are departments out west that are doing it, but here in the Northeast with the cold weather environment and stuff that we do it, for us to make sure that we are response ready all the time is just not practical right now. Technology is still too new when it comes to the larger
Until the
size
chargers
vehicles for
catch
us.
up, yeah.
Yeah, the charging and and I looked into it. There's like some places in Europe that do this, and like there's a couple European companies that make like fire trucks, but like I couldn't find a
Yeah, you
single
just-
American.
Just to your point, Casey.
Well, I would just 'cause I
the
drive one
bigger-
myself
Yeah,
and-
the bigger vehicles is what we're talking about aren't in that equation. But certainly code vehicles or vehicles that are used around town for various departments, those are definitely in consideration.
And that's the
for
discussion I
looking-
had with Charlie is that it would be practical for, say, the fire, personnel that don't have to utilize that vehicle on a 24-hour basis. It's practical because we can have the charging stations here. They can charge the vehicles overnight when they go home. Fire inspection, code, whatever other person's here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, that vehicle is charged in the overnight.
Yeah.
The two chief officers, the police department, it's just not practical. It's not practical at all for us because we have to be capable to run all the time.
They had some like small
And
snowplows.
what's the implied expense to somebody who has I live here in the city, so I have a take-home vehicle, so I'm capable all the time. How am I gonna charge it at home, and what's the cost to me on the backside of that?
Yeah, so it's.
So,
But we're good. There's more of the same sessions. We're not there yet, but I want to get as much federal money, especially with this fleet replacement. I'd like to, but it's not as strong.
The vehicle discussion is one we have so often across all the different departments. I wonder if we have or should have a sort of comprehensive registry of the fleet. Here's all the vehicles, here's their age,
Love
here's
that.
their useful life, and a replacement plan.
we do.
Yeah, we can do that.
Good work, team.
Good job.
Was that
It gets reviewed every year.
Yeah, but what I'm
For a
saying is
budget book?
something that, is useful for budget season, but also between budgets to say, hey, remember we talked about this, oh, you don't remember, look, it's in this registry under red in that, like, it's immediate replacement needed, it's codified, we don't have to,
Have a lot of discussion.
yeah, it's at least it's on a document, there was a plan associated with it.
Yeah. I love that. And then as we build a 1 and 5 year capital plans for this and further consideration, we kind of have our matrix in the same way that we think about roads and which ones are in better or worse shape and what's going to be needed to be replaced. Kind of tackling like that.
And that's why we're looking at our apparatus plan, exactly for that reason, because we don't want to be in this emergent purchase process, which the fire department has done a lot, doing emergency purchases because a truck has failed. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to get into a proper replacement cycle, but it won't be this year.
Not to beat it to death, but to just speak to John's idea, where my mind goes is, maybe that plan exists, but is there interdepartment efficiencies, like a bank, for example? And I'm not suggesting this is real, I'm suggesting that it might be something to look at. Most banks have one car, and they call it a bank car, obviously, and they travel to do, everyone, not everyone, but several people use that bank car. And I wonder if at City Hall, there might be some efficiencies, if we had 3 cars, that fire, code, city manager, whatever, may have some access to that. It may not be perfect, but it may be something to consider, as well as,
No, I drive a 93 Jeep Wrangler I've had since I was 16.
Well, I think you had some,
I'll keep driving it.
you had some of this discussion last night with the extreme, how busy code office is right now. You had that discussion last night, and that's exactly the case. I mean, they're getting in here at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're gone all day. And so even for them, a shared vehicle is very, very difficult because they're gone all the time.
comes into
I
personal.
do, you know, other departments, that may be something to look at. Other departments that have less frequency of use.
It may be unreal and it may be unrealistic, but it gets back to, at some point, there could be some personal reimbursement that would be far better than full-time vehicles.
It
I just-
gets, and the mileage on that is, if you use the federal, it's really,
Yeah.
it's good. But the problem is, if I remember correctly, that our insurance for personal vehicles is only for what is not covered by the person's insurance. So if there's an accident or a fender bender while they're going to, our insurance won't cover it. It only covers, it supplements the
The only thing they'll
police.
cover is deductible.
Huh?
They'll only cover the deductible.
Yeah, they just supplement
That's
your
it.
budget, yeah.
And I hate
Or
to-
if it's above your
I hate
coverage.
to, I want, police is gonna have a little bit of this too, and I think we do need a holistic strategy, and, you know, I'm gonna have more information on it, but a lot of police. We'll go to police, which is on 216, which I think will be our final for tonight. There's a couple other in public safety and traffic lights and other things.
Thank you,
Do
Tim.
that later.
Yeah, those ones I can go through pretty quick, kinda like we did last time around, so.
Everybody, zip scooters,
Um,
zip around town.
This one, and I know I promised I wouldn't do a lot of new papers, but this one we, you know, had some really great discussions with the chief and deputy chief. He's sort of also our leasing expert, so I think that's why I might have a little more lease conversations here tonight. My sort of recommendations is we're going to reduce the capital outlay from 10,000 to 9,000. This outlay, just to speak broadly, kind of covers a lot of like repairing like capital equipment that the police has. And just to start off with the police, the body on the capital side, the body cameras and the tasers, yeah, putting that also in the category of to consider for the bond later this year, that we won't have it on this budget. And the capital outlay, I think at 9,000, they can still live with kind of repairing what they have in-house. It's also the purchase and other things. That was a very small change. The other thing is, I know we talked about last time around on the leasing budget a bit, and I was a little unclear on whether the 39,000, which was in your previous book, was for 2 new cruisers or the total lease payment on the other cruisers, and you know, so. But I talked to the folks. This is, I think, a part of the process of, you know, starting in one part and kind of coming back. Is I think they were encumbering a fair amount from an insurance payment from last year into their lease budget. So, and last year they went from I think 5 to 7 cruiser leases. They have 15 total. Just to talk about fleet, because I had to get my head around these things. So they went from 5 to 7 last year. To do an additional 2 cruisers on the lease payment would bring us to 87,023. We talked a bit on, you know, they could stagger the new cruiser until the spring, and maybe save 7,000 there to kind of pull that down a little bit. But the police are kind of on a 2-year lease, and then it's, you know, we did the math a bit together, and once this is finished with the 15, you're looking at 150,000 or so as like, this is what the city of Ellsworth will have. You know, the lease may change, but with inflation and with the cost, like that's what we're going to carry each year for the fleet. And like the leases at some point we'll just start swapping out, and this whole, you know, the maintenance budgets. I know Sean's talked about that a lot. So those are my changes. We also split out, just for kind of due diligence, and we talked about this earlier, Michelle, is just the payroll overtime. You know, previously wasn't labeled as such in the fitness and the holiday and the best. The same thing with fire department, and go there. They were both public safety kind of labeled as general overtime, or general, just said payroll training or payroll vacation. That's overtime that we account for, you know, for vacation times is overtime we pay when people have vacation, both in police and fire. I think it's one of the reasons that we weren't budgeting benefits on overtime in the past, is people just didn't, you know, when there's all the changeover there, they didn't realize, oh, this is overtime. So the feds were taking that money out on the overtime, of course, but we weren't budgeting with, and that's a big reason why the employee benefits, certain areas of it have gone up. It's not that we're paying out any benefits, we're just doing true accounting for those pieces. And that's it on police. Oh, and the fuel went down by 10,000.
Yeah.
And I've got to add that to my.
The total amount of your recommended cuts, the 15% plus that 1,000 decrease in capital?
It's actually an increase because we're not accounting the encumbrance on the lease payment or on the insurance payment. In the same way that the roads, I can't count previous roads and say, Adam, move it forward. So it's those lease payments are gonna cost us $80,257 for the 2 additional cruiser leases this year, which will get us up to 9 full cruiser leases. Now we could pull off of that. You know, I think the police have made some good arguments about, like, this is the plan to do 2 a year for the cruiser replacement and have cost predictability. And to all your points, Michelle, and how much they use these, their points that these are offices. You know, I've had a lot of back and forth with them on trying to, hey, can we drop it down to, can we do this? But this seems like, you know, this is the plan, is to get there. It's been thought out. Sean has great recommendations here, and that's what it's going to truly cost. And I think we should go for it at that level.
So when we get to having all of them every 2 years, the equipment, I know I've asked you this before, but I never can remember, the equipment that needs to go from vehicle to vehicle, we're gonna have a steady amount for that every year too, for switching out? Once we get everybody, once you get the ones that you're switching out, you're gonna have to have new equipment for those again?
Yes and no. So we try to, we can reuse the modems twice. The radars, we can reuse twice. The cameras, we try to reuse at least twice. The watch guard. So there are some things that we do. With the technology and the lighting, by the end of the 5 years, it is usually outdated to be hooked up into the new design of the wiring or whatever. So a lot of those things we have to replace. If the model year hasn't changed, we're sometimes able to reuse the center console and the cage, but most of the time after 5 years, the model has changed enough so that the size is the same. The bolt patterns don't line up or things like that. Sometimes we've been able to buy a retrofit kit, and other times we haven't been able to. We always reuse what we can, no matter.
Yeah.
Question, when we went through this in February, there were 2 different budgets. There was the police budget, and then there was the building, because that was new. Are they merged in with now? It looks like they're merged.
Yes, they are all in one, yes.
Okay, it looked like it, I just wanted to be sure.
So, setting aside for a second the tasers and the body cams, Charlie's, the manager's proposal adjusts it, in the areas
There was discretionary wiggle room. So the 15% we talked about, that they, without, certifications and really necessary training, they probably drop it 15% for this year.
Well, and also we've been able to use the AL fund reimbursement, and that's helped us considerably.
Great.
They also do some of that grant funding for certain positions as well.
Okay. How are you guys feeling about Charlie's proposal?
I think we can work with it. I mean, it's, like you said, the 15% off training.
Yeah, I mean, we can work with that. The big discussion that we had today when we went and talked was about the cruises. It's our, I mean, like you said, the other two things aside, I mean, the stuff that we presented on the two capital really hasn't changed any.
Yeah.
I guess ultimately it's a decision for you guys. I mean, Sean did some research today on the body cams and the actual in-car cameras and stuff, and it's becoming outdated. I mean, he can speak to more on that. He talked to a couple of the vendors today about the cameras. We're just not gonna be able to get parts for them when they're gone, they're gone. We may not have a car with a camera in it down the road.
Yeah, no, and I think it's extremely important to have the cameras for a whole host of reasons, and obviously the less lethal, means with the tasers, but to Charlie's point, right, we've just, till we kind of get the house in order at the city, it's hard for us to, and to me, it's a priority for those things. I think it's very important for law enforcement to have those, but I think everyone here agrees, it's just a matter of the timing. And
Can those be paid from ARPA?
It could be ARPA.
Just so about the cameras, I know it came up, some questions whether they were a lease or a purchase. It's not a lease, they just allow us to make 5 yearly payments. We own the equipment at the end of it. So it is not a lease. And then I provided you, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read it, but just kind of the breakdown of if we didn't sign another contract with Motorola for the camera system, what it would cost just for us to be able to have the storage that we would need a year. And that's an estimated cost because they're projecting it out 5 years. So,
Not to negate my own recommendation, but that would clear ARPA. It wouldn't leave any for roads or for anything else, but that's about the remaining.
And Scott, forgive me, but we're doing a lot for fire this year. We're doing the exhaust and all of that. Is there something that we can kind of, like if we don't do both the body and the cruiser cameras, but the cruiser cameras are, I think, a minimum of what they should have. If there's some way that we can look at the ARPA funds and the way, what we're distributing and what we're doing and see if we can at least get the cruisers taken care of.
We can likely get those. This is kind of like not a no, it was a let's consider in the bond cycle, and we haven't really pulled too much off the police budget, yet. So, but we could, if we want to move those forward into this year, clear the decks on ARPA, not use ARPA for any roads, any other pieces. That'd probably be we'll watch in the final accounting, and honestly, administratively, it would make my lives and Matt's lives easier just to be like ARPA is closed book. Public safety, this is in line.
Because we get 6 things with ARPA this year for the fire department and nothing for the police department. So I just think it's got to be evened out a bit.
Yeah. But we were considering the remaining close to 100,000 in ARPA.
Yeah.
And that was either potentially roads or park.
Yeah, and the Knowlton Park has just gotten complicated because we can't really do what the citizens, I think, want us to do, what the 300, 400 comments on that news article, which is the playground. We can do other things with it. I think, we've got funding for Knowlton to do those slide repairs when Jim's back next week, I think it might
So ARPA couldn't be used to pay for a new playground?
No. So, there's things that could be signage and...
You'd have to prove that you're specifically serving a community that has been disproportionately impacted by COVID.
So
the work to do that by the time we have to allocate the ARPA.
I gotta tell her too that she's got the
so
wrong
it'd be
dates.
really complicated. So now
The playground's not 20 years old.
Oh, sorry. So
No, good, sorry.
So now we're really down to either roads or potentially we could use it for the cameras and.
Or hold something else off for the bond issue from the fire
But we
department.
have to expend ARPA funds this year, right?
Yeah, well, it had to be
Allocated.
allocated,
You have to allocate it.
but you can't just say they have to be, this is a real thing, it's gonna
Yeah.
pay for it.
Yeah.
Here's the contractors that we've lined up and,
So what's left with that, what we have left right now to choose from would be potentially the anything for the police?
and roads, culverts, pull it off of the tax rolls, so that 100,000 we could not, and again, we're gonna talk about 1.29 million in roads, that's 100,000 we could pull to
Okay.
1.1.
Well, maybe we
But
put
that's not gonna, as Steve mentioned,
Yeah.
like 100,000 in roads.
it's not gonna.
I mean, either way, it's the money we have, like, take it from wherever you want.
Could I,
Well, I guess to my point is we need to spend the ARPA money. It's 100,000, for the roads, obviously, that's 100,000 less off the tax bill for the city.
yeah.
This would be, but this is also potentially, by not,
Either way, I think it should be considered as a bond later this year, but we're
Yeah.
not going as immediate into it.
but could we, for roads, can we do any type of bonding or anything like that?
It would be, but to Michelle's point, it's kind of like, not for this, like, we wouldn't be able to fund projects through the end of the year because we're not going to get those bond monies in
Yeah.
to be able to pay out.
Okay, so the ARPA money for roads would be for this year, because we have the money and it could fund.
Allocate it.
And again, we don't know if we even need to do that until we reconcile and get through everything.
The other reason you don't want to bond this, though, is because for the police department this is like $65,000 for the body and the cruiser cameras. How much of that is cruiser, dude?
Yeah, I think it's. The majority of it is cruiser. To buy one in-car video system is $12,000 plus installation, so the
Plus
majority of that is.
And that's times, how many cars do you have?
We have 11 cameras.
So 12,000 times 11. And they're financing this? So if you're going to be financing a financing.
Yeah.
You
But
don't
that's
wanna
also
do
something to
that.
consider
Also,
here with
that-
this cost. Like, once you lock into this, you're 65K for the next 5 years on increase. You're
No,
actually,
you're,
or next year, we're not paying for it with ARPA, we're paying for it
Right.
with taxpayer money.
For ARPA, can you designate, like, roads? Or would it have to be Red Bridge Road, blah, blah, blah? Like, how specific would you have to be for ARPA?
You'd probably wanna point out the project that
I
you're
mean,
Yeah, the
honestly,
specific
$100,000 may get you your engineering. It's not
Yeah.
gonna get you a road.
Yeah, I
It's
was just wondering
not.
how you specific you had to be about it.
And that is the difference between fire and the police. The fires are, we're paying for them with ARPA, it's one and we're done. These other ones, you pay for it, like ARPA's paying for the first tranche, and then the taxpayer's paying for it, and you're locked in to, we just did an additional lease payment, we're doing cruisers at $150,000 a year. This is gonna be 65, 75, it's 90K you're gonna add to the budget for the police for the next 4 years.
Yeah, no.
But so again, I get your point, Michelle, not leasing a lease.
No, I'm sorry, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not.
You could buy it out for that.
So that.
I'm just thinking-
That whole proposal's for the whole integrated system, right? The cameras, body worn cameras, the car cameras, so they all work together, the storage, everything.
the body cam is actually the microphone for the cruiser cam. It's a system. It's not a.
Yeah.
It's not a separate thing. The first year price was 65, the remaining years are 45. They're willing to do whatever we want to do to make that work for us. So if we wanted to equal that all out, they're willing to do that. I've been at the salesman, I think we can maybe do a smidge better on the price before this is all said and done, but I'm not gonna take that step until we're ready to.
Yeah, so
They weren't
To do
charging us
that.
for the finance, I remember either, they were just breaking it out.
They were just breaking
Yeah,
out
they weren't
payments,
charging
yeah.
interest on it.
So we're gonna talk about roads at the next meeting, the big,
Yeah, I'm gonna bring Adam back for that one.
and then I think,
It could maybe even be the last one. It's like, well, I think I can get it ready for next
yeah,
time.
well, it seems like that conversation might be, okay, the last tranche of ARPA money, is it going to roads, or it seems like the obvious other place we could go is first year of funding for police, for capital improvement.
Yeah.
So
So
I
maybe we just reserve that conversation till that.
I have two things to add. Looking at the priorities for the ARPA spending, I look at it kind of the same for the capital. It's not, I guess I see it differently where Michelle, you were saying, well, we've done over here, so to be fair, we got it over here. It's more, when I look at it, what pays for itself and health and safety. So there's nothing here that pays for itself in the ARPA, but there is certainly in the capital. But I would consider this to be health and safety, both for the police officers and for the people that they are either not shooting because they're tasing them or the people who are around in that situation.
Yeah.
So I would put this as a higher priority for the ARPA funds than I would the roads. Not to say that we shouldn't do the roads.
They have tasers, and they're.
I
It's
understand,
not that
but
we don't have
I
to.
do remember the conversation from months ago about the need to upgrade.
Yeah, they're in some disrepair.
Yeah,
So-
we're paying also money for them that we could not be paying if we went this route. And-
So that's my point on that. The second question I have is, when we look at the budget overall, where are we in the hiring of a police chief? Will that be on board July 1st? Because we budgeted the chief, a deputy, and the captain. Are they all going to be on July 1st?
Either way, we're stipending a chief at the, currently at the chief level. The savings would be in potentially the captain position. But, you know, I have an update I think I've sent on the chief.
And we don't need to go into that, I'm just looking at it from the budget perspective. Is there something there if we're not going to have all three on by July 1st?
Yeah, we're definitely not gonna have all three on by July 1st. I thought we talked about the captain probably just naturally won't be staged until December. I don't know if we accounted for it in the budget.
I can't, they naturally
Sorry.
wouldn't be staged.
We wouldn't be probably bringing in the captain, just, you know, knowing the order of the chief, and
Okay.
then we can start looking for the
Right.
captain. There's, you know, potentially outside, but there could be an internal process for that captain piece, so we wouldn't probably bring them in December. What I'm saying is, I don't remember we talked about it, but I'm not sure we backed it out of the budget. We could maybe.
So I mean, that's a month from now, July 1st. If this does cover for all three, I understand all three are coming. I'm not disputing that, but looking for those opportunities.
No, I think that's a good point. We could pull out, as a negative here, the payroll. We'll do the adjust with Carrie as part of the actuals.
And have I been clear enough? I'm not saying don't fill them. I'm saying the reality is
No.
they won't be funded. They won't be filled by July 1st, so let's reflect that reality in the budget.
100%, I think
Okay.
December is, we just budget as if a captain started in December, or maybe Jan 1, I think that. But we had talked internally about that, but I don't think we accounted for it in payroll, so
So
we should.
that would be, that's some money.
There's some
I
savings.
mean, that's 5 figures,
Yeah.
not 6, but it's 5. And that may help with the work that we're trying to do here.
Captain savings.
That's his new name, is Captain
Captain
Savings. Yeah.
Captain Saving.
It's getting late, and so I just want to, and I wasn't saying that fire department shouldn't have something. I'm just thinking if we're going to hold
Yeah.
something off to bond, let's look at being able to figure out what is the priority for now and for what's bonded in the fall, not, don't do them. But I just think that as far as the police department is concerned, that is life safety, and I think it's.
Oh, and I think all the ones for fire are safe as well.
They
I
are,
agree.
exactly, but
I agree.
but there's,
That's my
everything is, but
reasoning
there's a
for going
priority.
to that, it's just different, that's
The
all.
police is, you know, we'd have to do the full cost, right? It's long-term. The other thing is we have, the fire's not getting a truck until later on too.
But what I'm also hearing is nobody is opposed to these purchases. They're going to happen. So if the first year of them is covered by ARPA, we're not misguiding ourselves on the future. We were gonna do that anyways.
Yeah.
So I'm still comfortable with those.
Could I get for the record, could we get a refresher from the police on what this does for the police and what this does for the citizens that interact with the police as far as the body cams? Do you have a body cam now? Do they work? They're not intertwined? Can you just refresh us on that?
Well, we currently don't have body cams.
Okay.
Obviously, the benefit is that it records every incident that you go to, comes on and off when the officer activates a cruiser. It helps the police department on complaints. Somebody makes a false allegation on a complaint, we have it on. In the instance of a shooting, it's evidence, it allows people to see the whole scenario play out. And we use it for court. I mean, Sean will tell you, we can't do a case now without him asking for the cruiser cam. And it helps with liability for the city in the long run. If you have a good shooting or an accident that cruiser's involved in, you can show camera that it wasn't on the city's end.
Pictures usually tell 1,000 words. And if you have that technology, not only is it good for you folks, if I understand this correct, but isn't it good for Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth if they were treated wrong in some case? If that is there and that's laid on the table every time, you currently have cruiser cams, correct?
Correct.
And that needs updating, or?
Yes, so the current system we have is not supported by Motorola anymore.
Okay.
So currently we have 11,000 videos in storage that is not supported. It's on the city server in their program. If there is a glitch, we have a major problem.
So
That could happen with a update, Jason said. Not likely, but you never know. You get updates sometimes. Those glitches happen. And then we would be required to get Motorola involved, which would be costly, because they would have to migrate all those videos onto that new server that's part of this system, because they don't support the old package anymore.
And it's currently on like a 2-year, so those stay, we keep those for 2 years, then they're done.
So I'm hearing,
Go ahead, Jeremy.
just say I'm hearing, yeah, we have it within the ARPA, I think, that we can get here. And so I can put this in, we'll do the accounting, and maybe even next, I'll do the final accounting on ARPA and see how close we
What I
get.
just did is right, because we have to clean up this sheet a little bit too. If you pay for these, you might be able to engineer a road, so.
Okay. We do have the interest too, that's right.
I'd also like to support what you said, Michelle, that a balance of ARPA use among departments, not anything against our fire department, but there's got to be a balance there. And it seems that the fire has gotten a fair amount of benefits from that. And telling the truth about an incident is very important, I would think, for both sides. Not just one side, but for both sides. You get the truth in the pictures. So just food for thought and echoing your feelings.
Well, I think maybe what I'm hearing is we return and we decide as a council, roads or police, on the remaining ARPA funds. One of them gets the ARPA funds now, and the other one is considered in the bonding in the fall.
Yeah, because these ones do go for this year, so it's,
Yeah.
if you're trying to cover something for this year, which is
Yeah.
sort of the intention of the, yes, on the cameras and the tasers, but as a bonding consideration, but if we feel like that's more important as of this year, but if we feel like there's 100,000 roads that covers the shortfall on something, or we have to tax more, that's your kind of your delta question. But I feel like roads isn't such a big category that you're gonna be in that level.
Yeah. I mean, I'm leaning towards ARPA for tasers and cameras, and then.
I think it's more in line with the spirit of ARPA.
I think it is.
I know there was additional rounds of roads, et cetera, that were kind of, but this was sort of the ARPA piece, public safety. So
But I want to give you the space. It sounds like you just want to kind of look at a few things before we.
yeah, I mean, I'm liking this more and more, but
Bonding roads makes more sense than bonding electronics.
Because they last a lot longer. I agree.
just
In theory,
remember
yeah.
that we're going to carry this, right? When
Thanks, Dave.
we did new lease payments, and I just want
Yeah.
to be budget conscious for this year.
So that's the other thing too, is, these are, like, the tasers, I think you had said they have a 5-year life, so you pay for them for 5 years, and then, so this is like a continuous payment?
We own the tasers as well. It's not a lease.
No, but it,
But
okay, so you
but
own.
there's no warranty on them anymore. So if we don't sign another contract to keep everything up to date, then there's no warranty on the tasers.
And that's where you guys are right now with your current tasers?
Yeah, we have 4 that are left under warranty, and you can't even,
Hey.
this model right here,
There's everything in
this
there.
model right here, we can't buy anymore. So
So,
when they're
And
broke,
it's not under warranty? the
No,
model?
no.
Okay.
well, yes, we have 4 of them left under
Okay.
warranty out of the whole fleet of them.
away, jeez.
Don't worry, Steve. Don't worry, Steve.
so that's another thing. So do you have a plan for, like, every year, so many are a replace, so you don't have all but 4 under warranty? Is there a way of doing that, or so that we don't have to switch out all 5? I mean,
No, because we
all of them
can't,
every 5 years because they're out of warranty?
Yeah, so the taser plan is, what we're paying for is the training cartridges, everything. They come and do the instruction for us, the initial one, because it's a brand-new platform.
Okay.
A model. So we're switching to a complete different model.
Gotcha.
Holsters, that includes the holsters.
Yeah,
It'll be a different.
targets, and it includes all the training cartridges for the 5 years. So right now, we're spending close to $2,000 in training cartridges a year, and that's gonna be all, that's all built into that
Into that price.
Yeah.
Quickly, is there any data of taser use saving lives?
As far as for us?
Yeah.
So in that, do they have that council's data?
I'm just-
Yes.
all your
Yeah, I mean, we just had an officer-involved shooting, and they ended up using the taser secondary, and if we hadn't had that, it could have easily turned out different.
And so the gentleman survived, and
Correct.
didn't get shot another time because of the taser?
Correct.
Okay.
Great, so we've got a lot of things for the change log, and glad to have a little bit of a break between budget sessions.
Yeah.
It's been 3 and 6 days, so we're gonna get to work on kind of editing, updating. Thanks for everybody's help, and this is feeling good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.